Cool Figure TV. Revolutionary salute. Revolutionary salute. Like, share, subscribe. Welcome to the House of Revolution. You know, I'm your humble host, the Yah means of Revolution. We got a World War III alert. Radioactive material has gone missing. Could it be what they're looking for? Is this what this all about? Let's get into this right now. Breaking news.
Hey guys, WW7. We have word now that radioactive material has gone missing, and it went missing in transit near Newfield, New Jersey. This is a U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission warning or alert that has been posted. This happened on 12/2. They say that this is a Cat 3 nuclear waste device. This has come up missing. According to the report, the shipping container that was supposed to be holding this showed up damaged and empty. So we have all this confusion going on with the drones and a lot of talk about them being equipped with nuclear sniffers and all this other stuff, of which it's all speculation out here at the moment because your government will give no solid answers. What we do know is that these things are spreading out across the country. They're being witnessed in Texas, Florida, Ohio, Kentucky, all over the place. So they're not just coming in off the ocean and going back out. There's something much larger at play here. But this new news, I wanted to let folks know the situation here. You can see on their site, they have several different reports, but this one specifically talks about in New Jersey, and it's been going on here since the 2nd. It could tie into what's going on. It could not, but this is some of the latest. I wanted to make sure everyone is in the loop. This device missing still. They haven't found it. And as I get more information, I'll keep you guys posted. Make sure to follow me on X for breaking news and join me for the live streams going live Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern, talking about this and a whole.
What is what? He asked you a question. What is that?
We come in peace. We come in peace. We come.
He says it is a government site and we should destroy it.
What's up, guys? Your boy Benny. We have been reporting on the drones hovering over New Jersey for weeks now. We've brought you all the physical evidence and the videos, and we've surfaced every theory that we thought was viable about what these drones are doing and why. Ladies and gentlemen, our concern has been turned into worry and actual fear now. And the reason for that is twofold. One, all of the professional liars inside of our government establishment and bureaucracy are now acknowledging that these drones are here, that they are operating them, and that they're doing it for your safety. Everyone from Alejandro Mayorkas to the Pentagon to now CIA spooks are coming out saying that it's a classified exercise. Ladies and gentlemen, former CIA officers don't go on Fox News and give unauthorized opinions like this. She's being told to go out and say that the U.S. is testing detection technology. Oh, okay. Got it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, a CEO of a military drone manufacturer here in America, in Wichita, Kansas, where an enormous amount of the aerospace engineering goes on in this country, has broken his silence. He's the CEO of Saxon Aerospace. His name is John Ferguson. And he's up with a video that he recorded explaining exactly what he believes is happening on the Eastern Seaboard and what these drones are doing. Ladies and gentlemen, Alex Jones and Joe Rogan have shared this video, and it is horrifying what the man tells us. And we've checked, this guy is real. He's not faking his identity or what he does for a living. He does manufacture drones. He does sell them to the United States military. He is an expert on this subject. Joe Rogan saying, this is the first video about drones that got me genuinely concerned. Alex Jones saying, I confirm with my sources that this is indeed the purpose and the reason these drones are swarming the New Jersey and New York area. There's a lot more to it. I'm headed to the office report released today. All right, so what does this man say? Let's take him at his word, and let's go.
Hey, everyone. My name is John Ferguson. I'm the CEO of Saxon Aerospace here in Wichita, Kansas. I'm not normally a TikTok kind of a guy. I like watching this stuff every once in a while. But I'm a manufacturer of unmanned aircraft, military grade unmanned aircraft, as you can see one of my systems here. There's all of these mysterious drones going on off the East Coast. And as a professional, as a subject matter expert, I wanted to give you all my opinion on what I think could be going on with these drones. I don't particularly believe that these have a nefarious intent. I could be wrong, but I want to give you the truth and what I believe. It's my own opinion, and I've not bounced this off of anybody. So, you know, if you think it's bullshit, whatever, that's cool. You know, I don't want to spread misinformation, as we know that there's a lot of that going around. But anyway, back in the 1980s, Ronald Reagan had dismantled the nuclear program, and there were, with Russia, there were countless nuclear missiles that were disarmed and disposed of. Well, there were over 80, I believe. There were over 80 nuclear warheads that were in Ukraine that came up missing. Okay. We don't know where they are. Maybe somebody does, but nobody really knows where these are. And I speak with some pretty high level government officials on this stuff, and it seems as though that is the case. So I spoke to a gentleman a few months ago who was trying to raise an alarm to the highest levels of our government, which they had their ears closed, about this one particular nuclear warhead that he physically put his hands on. He physically touched this warhead that was left over from Ukraine. And he knew that that thing was headed towards the United States. Okay. That is a very serious deal. And everyone knows that the United States government, this administration, is pushing to get into a war with Russia. We all know that. We all feel it. We all see it. Okay. Well, back up a few years. Do y'all remember when those drones were mysteriously flying across the Interstate 70 corridor from Colorado up into Nebraska, down here into Kansas, and out into Missouri? Well, it was believed that those drones were looking for radioactive material because there had been some material that come up missing here in the United States. And they felt like it was high probability that the nuclear or the radioactive material would be taken along the Interstate 70 corridor, heading east or west or south. So from what we understand, they were out there trying to find this radioactive material. Now, drones, they have no reason to be in the air at night, unless you're doing some type of ISR work, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, looking for bad guys, or looking for a victim, a search and rescue victim, or law enforcement, or some type of military project, right? There's no reason for a drone to be flying at night, really, okay? Because they don't see shit. So, unless you have thermal optics, drones really don't see stuff. You need to do mapping during the day. If you're going to do farming stuff, mostly do it during the day. The only reason why you would ever fly an aircraft, an unmanned aircraft at night, is if you're looking for something, whether it be a person or trying to smell gas. We have methane gas detection systems that can that can detect gas leaks in pipelines. You really wouldn't use thermal optics for trying to find gas leaks, just simply because the only way you're actually going to find a gas leak with thermal optics is if the gas leak is aggressive enough that it has a difference in temperature, because thermal imaging, it creates a digital image based off of the temperature variance. So whatever is different in temperature, it creates an image. Usually gas leaks so slow that it goes quickly into ambient, before you can even see it. So we have special sensors that can detect gas leaks. We also have special sensors that can detect radioactive material. So with this gentleman that I had spoken with, who was trying to raise the alarm to try to get somebody in the government to say, hey, we need to work together to go try to find this nuclear warhead, none of that ever happened. They knew that warhead was on its way to the United States. That's all that ever came of it. Nothing ever happened. This government did not do anything at all to help this gentleman raise the alarm and raise awareness that there is a very deadly weapon on its way to the United States. It's out there. Nobody knows where it's at now. It left Europe. Now it's gone. So my own guess, is that these drones are not nefarious in intent. If they are, they are, but I doubt it. But if they are drones, the only reason why they would be flying and flying that low is because they're trying to smell something on the ground. That's it. There's no other reason for a drone to be flying in the air other than to piss a bunch of people off at night. That's it. So my belief is they're trying to smell something on the ground, gas leaks, radioactive material, whatever. So, and do I think that that they're coming up out of the ocean? No, I don't think so. Drones that are multi-copter type drones, not the fixed wing aircraft that look like regular airplanes, but the multi-copters, they only have so much battery life. They have hybrid versions that are gas powered with electric, but those can still only fly for a short period of time. There's no way in hell that any drone is going to go miles off the coast as a multicopter and fly into the interior of the United States and do a bunch of work and then turn around and fly back. It's just physics will not allow that to happen. So these drones, I believe, are launched from a location that nobody knows, but I do believe that they're flying low enough that they're just trying to sniff the ground and try to find something. So again, I hate to be a pessimist or a guy that thinks, directly to the negative. However, I know as a professional, I mean, we build professional stuff for the military. I believe that they're actually out there trying to smell something that's very important. So anyway, let me know what you think of this video. I'm not trying to gaslight. I'm not trying to scare people. I'm just trying to let people know that this is a serious deal. It's only serious for what the potential could be, or for what the potential is. There's a lot of them out there. They're flying all over. They're flying low. They're flying at night. There's no reason for it other than to smell something. So anyway, God bless. I hope you all have a wonderful Merry Christmas, and let me know what you think of the video. Thank you.
So that's horrifying and critically alarming. It explains everything. It explains why our government is acknowledging that these drones are real and doing nothing about it. It explains why people like Alejandro Mayorkas, who's made a career lying to the American people, are saying that there's no reason for concern. It explains why these drones are clustering around certain areas, flying at night and around military bases. They're probably being launched from those military bases. It explains why there have been 0 drone shoot downs, 0 It explains why when a drone crashed in New Jersey, the wreckage was cleaned up just like that. The FBI were the first ones on the scene, and guess what they found? Nothing. It explains everything. Mystery solved. Radiation spikes in New Jersey and New York metro area detected amid drone sightings. There have been significant radiation spikes detected in the New York and New Jersey metro area amid a spate of mysterious drone sightings. One theory that has been floated by subject matter expert John Ferguson is the fact that these drones are sniffing for radiation from what may well be a dirty bomb or a nuclear bomb. And here's what happened. When the government of the United USSR collapsed, Ukraine was a nuclear state. Ukraine had nuclear weapons, and Ukraine wasn't allowed to keep those nuclear weapons. Ukraine had to give them up. This is in the early 90s, after the Soviet Union collapse. As has been detailed in many, many movies about the period, it was a free-for-all. Lord of War is a good example. It's a free-for-all for munitions and arms and nuclear weapons around the world. Could a terrorist entity, radical splinter of some organization have bought and kept a nuclear weapon for a moment just like this from that chaos in the aftermath? Yes, absolutely. The answer is yes. And that probably is what's happening here. Drone over America. Who's flying these things? Mysterious drones are buzzing over New Jersey and Maryland. Nobody seems to know why. But what's amazing is that the people who do know exactly why they're being flown, like senators and members of Trump's national security team, are all saying the government needs more transparency in what's going on, and that there are gaps in authorities between departments. They're not saying it's not real. They're not saying it's not happening. They're saying it's happening. It's happening for a reason, and it's scaring the crap out of the American public, and it's time to let them know why. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a horrifying update to this story. Are we about to see the first false flag from the deep state in the Trump era? Are we about to see the most horrific attack on an American city or population in our lifetime as a predicate for forever war and war with Russia? God help us, truly. God help us. God help us. It's your boy Benny. Like, share, and subscribe.
So, ladies and gentlemen, what I'm about to show you isn't just another breaking story. It's potentially the most significant national security threat we've faced since 9/11. A source with special access has revealed that those mysterious drones we've been tracking across American skies are actually part of a massive counter-terror operation. So that's encouraging. Okay, and this is one of the reasons why they're being so vague when they address they're not a threat, so you have nothing to worry about. But how do they know that? Well, now we know. Apparently, the Office of Global Access has deployed these advanced surveillance assets for one purpose: hunting for a dirty bomb that's believed to be hidden somewhere on U.S. soil. But here's what should really keep you up at night. The reason the intel is leaking now, well, because time may be running out.
She's very suspicious, These because we're gonna look at several U.S. Air Force bases, different bases having to go on lockdown. Why are they going on lockdown? Because the Democrats refuse to cede power, and they finna do something very nefarious. They're soldiers.
Now let's get into the details here. Okay, this was specifically revealed to me. Bombshell information. Now, these are our drones. These are our drones. They are tracking gamma rays linked to possible WMDs in a massive counter-terror operation. Now, it's the Office of Global Access, a 3-letter agency, deployed advanced surveillance assets to hunt for stray nuke or mass casualty weapon hidden on the east and west coast. The mission objectives are to detect communications that are tied to the device, partner with law enforcement for rapid response, and prevent mass panic while advancing intelligence operation. Now, low altitude surveillance aircraft are scanning for specific signals. Special op units are ready for instant action. Cyber intel teams are analyzing the different networks. Now, sources say this could involve a submarine breach of our SOS US warning nets or a WMD hidden in a cargo container or a vehicle. Of course, the stakes are high. And of course, the government's silence does speak volumes because they don't want people to panic. And people already are panicking because there hasn't been disclosure, clear disclosure. As you saw in our previous report on this topic, people are actually taking.
See, we spoke on this a couple of days ago. If something nefarious like this was going on, when I read a report that those drones could be looking for some type of weapon of mass destruction, and it's near the Christmas and holiday spending, they don't want to mess up multi-billion-dollar time of the year now, do they? Even if it could save lives. Oh, hell no. You got to go out and shop and spend and go on about your lives as usual. Who gives a damn if you could be about to die?
Up arms, and they're shooting at anything they see in the sky, which should not be happening. You should not be taking up any arms. You should not be taking aim at anything in the sky. Okay, that is very, very dangerous because a lot of these videos that are surfacing, a lot of them are being identified as passenger airliners or small passenger jets. Some could be nefarious actors just trying to get people to watch their video. Oh, look, they sent up a drone. Oh, look at this. You know, people making crazy claims, and it's creating a lot of hysteria. And we try to debunk a lot of that stuff last night. Go back into our channel, look at the videos. I mean, Japanese lanterns. People are seeing video. They're sending in videos. They're posting them online. These masses of lights in the sky clearly are Japanese lanterns, and people are freaking out. So anything that people see in the sky, this heightened sense of hysteria and paranoia. People are pointing their cameras, using garbage phones, and they're recording anything they see. And it's all spreading around, and it's actually muddying the waters. OGA's advanced ISR, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance tactics, including low and slow aerial monitoring, are actively in play. Now, the intel is leaking. Dirty bomb or worse could already be here. So
now, the orbs and the UAPs that doesn't belong to the government that we have checked out have also been documented at times in history around nuclear sites, testing locations. Even one documented dismantled one nuclear test, dismantled a missile. But anyway, so that also coincides with something nefarious going on. And whatever these orbs are and the UAPs, they are also investigating, could the humans be about to destroy the goddamn Earth?
We have corroborating information that supports what my source has revealed. Now, if you look at the front page of the Drudge Report, these are the top stories right now. Fed up New Jersey sheriff sends own drone up to follow mysterious flying objects. Drones, planes, or UFOs? Americans abuzz over mysterious New Jersey sightings. Now, this guy, John Ferguson, just published this. He is the CEO of Saxon Aerospace, a manufacturer of manned drones, giving his assessment. Now, he's got this is a 9-minute video he posted. And we're going to play it for you because what he says here is exactly what we're talking about. So he's not the only person. Intel from verified high source. Sarah, okay, then the Sean Ryan show also. This was published 2 days ago, mind you. Sarah Superbad Adams reveals how Russia and its pipelines are aiding our enemies in smuggling supplies into America for a planned homeland attack. Again, this is all now open source intelligence that is flooding in, and people are sharing it. We're going to play this clip for you too. Now, this is from Jack Lombardi. He just shared this with me 45 minutes after I received my text message. Urgent alert, Russia's vengeful strategy could lead to terror on U.S. soil. And I called Jack and we had a conversation. And I said, man, I just received a text about this very topic. And as Jack writes here, disturbing news has emerged. Russia is reportedly assisting this group in smuggling supplies into the U.S., potentially positioning for homeland attack. This intelligence shared by a former CIA targeter suggests a sinister motive, retaliation for the U.S. supporting Ukraine against Russian aggression. Imagine the horror of our own policies meant to uphold freedom abroad, possibly being exploited to endanger our own people. With the current administration's open border policies, have we unwittingly laid out a welcome mat for terror? I think so. The thought of lives lost, families shattered, and our homeland under threat is unbearable. This isn't just about border security. It's about the safety of every American. Russia's strategy seems clear. If we aid Ukraine, they'll strike back where it hurts most, on our soil. You know, having the border open for the last 4 years has been one of the greatest national security threats. People are talking about having multiple October 7th style events happening right here in the United States. People getting captured from the terrorist watch list right here in American soil. These are all mainstream news reports that have corroborated all of these concerns. We must ask ourselves, are we ready to face the consequences of our foreign policy when it's used against us? Can we, in good conscience, continue with policies that might be putting national security at risk? This is not about politics. It is about survival. We must demand a reassessment of our border and foreign policy before we pay the ultimate price for supporting Ukraine. Now, let's listen to what she had to say before we get into this, this gentleman here, John Ferguson. We're going to play his clip. But we're going to listen to this clip here from the Sean Ryan show first.
Push at us for Ukraine. There's information that Russia and Russian pipelines are helping bring in some of the resources that are going to support Al-Qaeda's homeland attack.
Into this country?
Yep, to push at us for Ukraine. Just like we're doing stuff against Russia.
So hold on. So let me get this straight.
Ukraine.
So Russia's sending supplies into the United States to help with the terrorist homeland.
Their pipeline is helping move some of Al-Qaeda's supplies in the United States for their home.
Al-Qaeda is in Syria, ma'am. We helped them take over Syria, ma'am. We don't believe Al-Qaeda is going to attack America. Al-Qaeda works for America.
Which
is, that's good that they're saying that, because now we know the CIA plan on blaming Al-Qaeda and Russia for what they plan on doing.
Probably our own fucking supplies because we left everything there. Am I right?
I mean, it's a different kind of supply. I'll tell you what the supply is, but it is a Russian channel reportedly that the supply has moved through. There's information.
Okay.
Russia.
She brings up this important point. And what's even more concerning is what John Ferguson has revealed. Now, what he brings up an important point. He talks about during the 80s when the Russian program, the nuclear program was dismantled, there was a lot of missing nuclear material. And in fact, I know people close to me that aided in trying to hunt down some of that material back then. So this brings up an even more concerning situation when you consider what I have just learned about these shipping containers.
That's not even true. See, all of this, he has the secret sources told him about the missing Russia nuclear material from Ukraine. All that is a lie. They want to blame Russia for their own nuclear bombs. Ukraine never had any nuclear missiles. Let's just get this understood. That's a big lie. That's a big lie. Russia always had the nuclear missiles in Ukraine, locked and stored up under Russian security, and you need the nuclear codes to activate the goddamn missiles. See, that's one thing. You need the nuclear codes to activate the goddamn missiles, you know? So Ukraine never had no missiles. That's a big lie. So when it came time to Soviet Union collapse, those were Russian missiles that Russia took back to Russia. Wasn't no 80 nuclear missiles sitting around to be smuggled into the U.S. by Al-Qaeda. Well, that make a good movie, but we know the U.S. trying to blow up nuclear material in the U.S., blame it on Russia, put Ukraine in there. You see what's going on here?
Or vehicles and these drones are now sniffing They are sniffing for the signature of these devices. So when I saw this clip, I said, holy cow, it's not like it's a big secret anymore. People are connecting the dots on their own. Citizen journalists are doing the homework that the mainstream media just can't do anymore because they are outdated dinosaurs.
Y'all can't lie to my people.
Let's listen to what John Ferguson has to say, CEO of Saxon Aerospace.
Hey, everyone. My name is John Ferguson. I'm the CEO of Saxon Aerospace here in Wichita, Kansas. I'm not normally a TikTok kind of a guy. I like watching this stuff every once in a while. But I'm a manufacturer of unmanned aircraft, military grade unmanned aircraft, as you can see one of my systems here. There's all of these mysterious drones going on off the East Coast. And as a professional, as a subject matter expert, I wanted to give you all my opinion on what I think could be going on with these drones. I don't particularly believe that these have a nefarious intent. I could be wrong, but I want to give you the truth and what I believe. It's my own opinion, and I've not bounced this off of anybody. So, if you think it's bullshit, whatever, that's cool. I don't want to spread misinformation, as we know that there's a lot of that going around. But anyway, back in the 1980s, Ronald Reagan had dismantled the nuclear program, and there were, with Russia, there were countless nuclear missiles that were disarmed and disposed of. Well, there were over 80, I believe. There were over 80 nuclear warheads that were in Ukraine that came up missing. Okay. We don't know where they are.
See this dude right here. I'm glad I paid attention because see this dude part of it all. That's why he comes out. Everybody running his story. Oh, I work with the government on these drones. You don't have nothing to worry about. They're looking for the nuclear material that's finna blow you up. Oh man, this is he part of it because he got I'm the expert. 80 nuclear weapons were left over. Get the fuck out of here. What the hell are you smoking? You think Russia leaving nuclear weapons anywhere? But since he said it, okay. But I'm glad what he's verifying for us is what their intent is to blow us up, blame Russia, say Russia helped Al-Qaeda. Here go Al-Qaeda again. Like we don't know they just put Al-Qaeda in power in Syria. But they know a lot of Americans are stupid and don't know they just put Al-Qaeda in power. Al-Qaeda is after the U.S. Bullshit.
Or maybe somebody does, but nobody really knows where these are. And I speak with some pretty high level government officials on this stuff, and it seems as though that is the case. So I spoke to a gentleman a few months ago who was trying to raise an alarm to the highest levels of our government, which they had their ears closed, about this one particular nuclear warhead that he physically put his hands on. He physically touched this warhead.
Yeah, he should be arrested. He should be arrested. He touched the nuclear warhead. Good. He accessory. He touched the nuclear warhead. Why he didn't know? What is he doing around illegal nuclear weapons? And then he gonna tell Americans about what he's seen, man? Y'all think we stupid? Where is this dude? Who is this dude? Is this dude Jew? This friend of yours that you talking about? You have a buddy? Oh man, this dude need a lot of take a test. When did you touch that nuclear weapon, brother?
That was left over from Ukraine, and he knew that thing was headed towards the United States. Okay, that is a very serious deal, and everyone knows that the United States government, this administration, is pushing to get into a war with Russia. We all know that. We all feel it. We all see it.
Oh,
okay.
Now, why this is very dangerous? Remember, I reported to y'all maybe 5 or 6 days ago. Russia warned all their citizens do not go to the U.S. That's why this not a game, because something finna go on. Putin knows it's finna go on, but it's not Russia gonna be. The Russians know all these people here crazy. They finna kill themselves and have a civil war, all because Joe Biden and the deep state don't want Trump in power. But Putin did warn Russian citizens, do not go to the United States of America.
Well, back up a few years. Do y'all remember when those drones were mysteriously flying across the Interstate 70 corridor from Colorado up into Nebraska, down here into Kansas, and out into Missouri? Well, it was believed that those drones were looking for radioactive material because there had been some material that come up missing here in the United States. And they felt like it was high probability that the nuclear or the radioactive material would be taken along the Interstate 70 corridor heading east or west or south. So from what we understand, they were out there trying to find this radioactive material. Now, drones, they have no reason to be in the air at night unless you're doing some type of ISR work, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, looking for bad guys, or looking for a victim, a search and rescue victim, or law enforcement, or some type of military project, right? There's no reason for a drone to be flying at night, really, okay? Because they don't see shit. So, unless you have thermal optics, drones really don't see stuff. You need to do mapping during the day. If you're going to do farming stuff, mostly do it during the day. The only reason why you would ever fly an unmanned aircraft at night is if you're looking for something, whether it be a person or trying to smell gas. We have methane gas detection systems that can detect gas leaks in pipelines. You really wouldn't use thermal optics for trying to find gas leaks, just simply because the only way you're actually going to find a gas leak with thermal optics is if the gas leak is aggressive enough that it has.
You know what? These people are insane enough and outrageously nefarious enough to blow up a dirty bomb in America, blame it on ISIS and Al Qaeda, and say that's the reason they got to go invade Syria and take all that, finish taking the oil and seizing the country and doing all the BS they want to do. They are dumb. They are crazy enough to blame Al Qaeda like we don't know they're the ones put Al Qaeda in power. But they done it before. They put them in power in Afghanistan, and then 9/11 happened, and they say, oh, we got to go attack them because they just attacked us. Now, remember, to the youth, they never been through this play before. They don't know about this play. We old enough to know, those who know. So to them, this all new. This play they gonna run. Al Qaeda's finna attack us with a dirty bomb. Oh, where's Al Qaeda at? Oh, they just so happen to be in power in Syria.
A difference in temperature, because thermal imaging, it creates a digital image based off of the temperature variance. So whatever is different in temperature, it creates an image. Usually gas leaks so slow that it goes quickly into ambient before you can even see it. So we have special sensors that can detect gas leaks. We also have special sensors that can detect radioactive material. So with this gentleman that I had spoken with, who was trying to raise the alarm to try to get somebody in the government to say, hey, we need to work together to go try to
then blame Russia and Al Qaeda, knowing y'all don't remember Al Qaeda and ISIS just attacked Russia, killed a bunch of citizens a couple of months ago, hand in hand with the CIA. But blame Russia. The people don't give a damn about us. They all of the government, they go to their nuclear bunkers, and then they do what they want to do the whole time, have World War III, depopulation. This is how you get it. Al Qaeda and Russia attack America with a dirty bomb. We must have a draft. You're going to fight. They killed your grandmother. No, you're going to fight anyway, goddammit.
To find this nuclear warhead. None of that ever happened. They knew that warhead was on its way to the United States. That's all that ever came of it. Nothing ever happened. This government did not do anything at all to help this gentleman raise the alarm and raise awareness that there is a very deadly weapon on its way to the United States.
From America,
it's out there. Nobody knows where it's at now. It left Europe. Now it's gone. So my own guess, is that these drones are not nefarious in intent. If they are, they are, but I doubt it. But if they are drones, the only reason why they would be flying and flying that low is because they're trying to smell something on the ground. That's it. There's no other reason for a drone to be flying in the air other than to piss a bunch of people off at night. That's it. So my belief is they're trying to smell something on the ground, gas leaks, radioactive material, whatever. So, and do I think that that they're coming up out of the ocean? No, I don't think so. Drones that are multi-copter type drones, not the the fixed wing aircraft that look like regular airplanes, but the multi-copters, they only have so much battery.
Revolutionary salute to our queen, Shannon G, for the donation to the war chest. Revolution is a way of life. No, I absolutely appreciate the love, queen. Salute to you.
Battery life. They have hybrid versions that are gas powered with electric, but those can still only fly for a short period of time. There's no way in hell that any drone is going to go miles off the coast as a multicopter and fly into the interior of the United States and do a bunch of work and then turn around and fly back. It's just physics will not allow that to happen. So these drones, I believe, are launched from a location that nobody knows, but I do believe that they're flying low enough that they're just trying to sniff the ground and try to find something. So again, I hate to be a pessimist or a guy that thinks, directly to the negative. However, I know as a professional, I mean, we build professional stuff for the military. I believe that they're actually out there trying to smell something that's very important. So anyway, let me know what you think of this video. I'm not trying to gaslight. I'm not trying to scare people. I'm just trying to let people know that this is a serious deal. It's only serious for what the potential could be, or for what the potential is. There's a lot of them out there. They're flying all over. They're flying low. They're flying at night. There's no reason for it other than to smell something. So anyway, God bless. I hope you all have a wonderful Merry Christmas, and let me know what you think of the video. Thank you.
So he's saying they are not active, nefarious drones, but they are actually working to help us. So people who are taking pop shots at these drones in New Jersey, you guys need to stop. Okay, let these things do their work. Everyone just try to chill out so they can track these things. I know if what everybody is saying here is in fact true, that they are looking for a dirty bomb, looking for gamma signatures, radioactive signatures, then we got to make sure that they can find this thing. Because we've got President Trump coming into office. And the last thing that this country needs right now is a dirty bomb going off in New Jersey or New York or Washington, D.C. I mean, they would love to throw this nation into chaos right now.
But another thing, these drones been spotted in England, been spotted in China, Russia, other places around the goddamn world. So when you think about other people around the world flying these drones, that just make you think about the Mossad. Now, only Israel is insane enough to have bombs go off all over the world and blame Al-Qaeda.
They do not want President Trump to get into office. He won that election. He has a mandate. And of course, the globalists are terrified. They're already shaking in their boots because Trump is waving the big tariff stick right in all their faces. And it's going to throw off their entire economic game. and how they've been fleecing this country and fleecing.
And they already saying the rebels seized chemical weapons in Syria, man. Yeah, these people is nuts.
You for so long. Now, this is not just one person who's bringing this information forward. This person, my theory, my opinion, some sort of nuclear threat or material is in or near New Jersey. Government doesn't want to create mass panic or scare and a run on grocery stores. So they launch these prototype or advanced detection drones to scan the areas that they think that the threat might be located in. This person here, Sean, says anyone else feel these drones could be looking for a dirty bomb or nuclear device the deep state is planning to detonate prior to Trump taking office. Timing is suspect. Drones equipped with nuclear detection capabilities are actively searching for dirty bombs as part of a secretive operation managed by Space Force. All this information is all breaking right now. U.S. Civil Defense, 6 hours ago, rumors are floating around. These drones are from the U.S. government deployed across the East Coast to detect a possible nuclear device. The terrorist from the enemy country will try to sneak it in. Shadow of Ezra, military sources have informed journalist Jay Anderson the lack of public transparency regarding the drone stems from their deployment of U.S. drones in response to a potential biological or nuclear threat. Now, when Jay Anderson initially posted this, I just kind of said, nah, come on now. But then when I start getting messages from people that I trust, I have to look again, because it is now no longer in the realm of rumor, in my opinion. Mystery drone spotted over New Jersey, Staten Island. Also here, Shaq Diesel, I'm hearing from multiple sources. The reason the drones are not being addressed is because drones are being deployed due to a threat. Fed up New Jersey sheriff sends own drone to follow mystery flight objects. What happened left him stunned. And then there was this. We have this video here. Jay Anderson also posting this. In fact, I have a tweet from Mancow that I received late last night. It was about 2 o'clock in the morning. And I'm going to see if he actually published it. I'm going to check that. Let's watch this short clip first. This is from News Nation. Reporter goes to see drones in New Jersey. He says, my entire worldview has changed. What I saw was more sophisticated than I ever imagined. We've been looking for the past hour. I think we've seen 40 or 50 of these drones. Let's listen.
In fact, there's one over. Hi, Elizabeth. Well, I got to be honest here. You know, when this story first came out a few weeks ago, as a resident of New Jersey, as a journalist, I didn't pay it much credence. I thought it would turn out to be a bunch of pranksters and this would all be over by now. The experience I had last night, however, changed the way I feel about this story completely. What I saw was more sophisticated than I ever imagined. Take a look.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least 5 lights, 6 lights.
I didn't believe what I was seeing. But what was I seeing? We're here in central Jersey. We've been looking for the past hour. I think we've seen about 40 or 50 of these drones. In fact, there's one over my shoulder right there. One after another, these drones appeared in the night sky. If you look real close, they look like fixed-wing aircraft, about 8 to 10 feet wide, colorful, white blinking lights.
That is not a plane.
Definitely not an airplane, but what was it? Hours earlier, I was invited to join the Ocean County Sheriff Department. They launched their own drones to see if they could intercept the mysterious aircraft New Jersey residents have been reporting in recent weeks. The department says these mystery drones evade detection because they don't give off heat like regular drones.
Why do you think that is?
We don't know. It's just something that we haven't, it's not something that we've had our hands on. It's not something that we've experienced.
Something they hadn't experienced until now. One of their officers called 911 after seeing 50 of them come off the ocean.
Advised after we made contact with that officer that there were 50 that came off the ocean.
50?
50. That was my reaction also. There were 50 that were coming off the ocean.
And this is a sworn officer?
A sworn officer, yes. We contacted state police, we contacted the FBI, we contacted the Coast Guard, at which point the Coast Guard went out with their boat and they reported seeing 13 following their boat. And then the Coast Guard also advised that they went over them about 300 feet and had a wingspan of about 8 feet.
I see one right here. Did I see the same thing that officer saw? I'm still not sure. What I can show you is this video. What I can tell you is I've never seen anything like it before. Wow. And
okay, so I get a tweet from Mancow, and of course he likes to put pictures in his tweets. I get a message from him, and right before he tweeted it out, I'm going to read it to you what he said. But first, I have this from Ethical Skeptic. This was actually published 4 days ago. Now, keep this in mind. Active interrogation uses fast neurons or X-rays to probe physical cores, prompting emission of detectable gamma rays and thermal neurons can be deployed on drones to locate concealed fissile weapon. Okay? This is active neuron interrogation. So this is a drone that is capable of detecting these types of gamma rays and weapons of mass destruction. Now, let's get to Mancow. Come on, Mancow. All right. So Mancow sends me this. Mancow predicts future news. Syria, the rapture, drones, UFOs, and LeBron. The one tweet that you must read. He says, you will not believe what you are about to see, the unfolding. This is from my tippy top sources. And as usual, I will not get the credit and others will parrot me, but here it goes. All right, we're going to give Mancow the credit he deserves here. He says, I hope just one of you will remember you heard it here first. He says, we're about to really screw the pooch and move resources to the Jordan area, 82nd Airborne, 10th Mountain Division. The focus will totally shift off Ukraine. Ukraine is a Biden globalist circle jerk, and that group will be moving in. Give it 15 to 20 days. What's there in charge of Syria now will be quickly overwhelmed. This is much bigger than the world knows. These drones are not extraterrestrial. It's a setup for what? An event to prevent Trump from getting in, some have said. They may be correct. I think it will be an effort by the God-hating people to discredit our Christ or negate the rapture. Ross Coulthart has a News Nation special at 8 Central on these drones tonight. Wonder if I will agree on his take. And then finally, he goes into LeBron. He says LeBron is toast, much more horrific than imagined. Of course, there are things at play with LeBron that are related to, I believe, perhaps the Diddy case. It's something else that's not even related to this moment. He says, I've heard many, not all, good and Obama plays bad military brass are in unison, furious at Trump for accidentally recently speaking about some classified military information publicly. Now, I'm not sure what he's making a reference to here. I would have to do some more deep diving to figure out if there was something said. I haven't heard anything yet, but this is the first time I'm hearing it. He says, what it was, I am not to repeat. It was said in public, however. Truly, Trump has a lot on his mind. He said, I've done the same thing broadcasting. You forget what's supposed to be secret sometime and praying. So we have a lot of information here to process. We're going to continue to follow this and bring you the latest as it's happening. And I wanted to do this breaking emergency report for you to bring it to your attention. We don't normally do
Many independent military experts and analysts have noticed that Western pro-government propagandists from major publications and news agencies have begun to regretfully admit that the militants of the so-called Syrian opposition are trying to avoid clashes with Russian troops, and even give way to Russian military columns on Syrian roads. In particular, numerous videos from Syria began to appear on the network, where terrorists look at the movement of Russian military columns and do not even try to attack. Moreover, the pro-Turkish terrorists even refused to attack the Russian military in the city of Homs. Instead, the militants unblocked all roads and allowed Russian troops to leave the city, along with military equipment and weapons. At the moment, numerous Russian military convoys are heading to the west of Syria, towards the Russian military bases in Khmeimim and Tartus. All this indicates that Vladimir Putin and Recep Tayyip Erdogan have reached certain agreements regarding the Syrian issue. By the way, a few minutes ago, Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Mikhail Bogdanov officially announced that Moscow is negotiating with the current Syrian authorities regarding the future fate of Russian military bases in Khmeimim and Tartus. According to him, the current Syrian authorities have a positive attitude to the fact that the Russian military will continue to remain in the region. Moreover, the authoritative American publication Bloomberg, citing its own sources in Damascus, also stated that Russia is likely to be able to retain its main military bases in the western part of Syria. Meanwhile, on December 14, Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan made a rather sensational statement. In particular, he officially stated that only thanks to the actions of Turkey, the Syrian opposition militants did not meet resistance on their way, and were able to capture all the key cities of Syria. According to him, the current situation in the world helped Turkey convince Russia and Iran not to provide military assistance to Bashar al-Assad, as a result of which the Syrian rebels managed to seize power in Syria without bloodshed, and in a very short period. Thus, a senior Turkish diplomat officially confirmed that everything that happened in Syria happened with the tacit approval of Iran and Russia. The fact that after the overthrow of Bashar al-Assad, Russia retained its embassy in Damascus and the main military bases in Tartus and Khmeimim indicates that Vladimir Putin really had some kind of agreement with his Turkish counterpart. By the way, a few days ago, Recep Tayyip Erdogan also hinted that there are certain
Revolutionary salute to our brother Vincent Brown Scott for the donation to the war chest. Revolution is a way of life. Absolutely appreciate the love, family. Salute.
Agreements between Turkey and Russia. In particular, in an interview with journalists, the Turkish leader called Vladimir Putin and himself the most experienced politicians in the world. However, despite such clear hints from Turkey that the overthrow of Bashar al-Assad took place with the tacit approval of the Russian president, some aspects of what happened are really hard to believe. The fact is that Russia would never agree to the terrorists from the Tahrir al-Sham group from seizing power in Syria. Moreover, Vladimir Putin is well aware that there are a huge number of Soviet and Russian weapons in Syria that can be used by the West against the Russian army in Ukraine, where Moscow is one step away from victory. By the way, the Kremlin's fears about the large stocks of weapons of the already former Syrian army have been fully justified. The fact is that on December 13, U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken arrived in Turkey, where he tried to convince Recep Tayyip Erdogan of the importance of transferring all weapons of the Syrian army to the Kiev regime. We are talking about more than 2,152,000 and 122 mm artillery shells, 5,000 units of T-62, T-72, and T-90 tanks, and even 3,000 units of BMP-1 and BMP-2 infantry fighting vehicles. Of course, most of this military equipment is defective. However, even a small part of them can provide significant assistance to the retreating Ukrainian troops. Well aware that Erdogan cannot be trusted, especially given the fact that the United States has quite effective levers of influence on Ankara in the form of Kurdish formations near the Turkish border, Vladimir Putin solved this problem with the help of Washington's most important ally in the Middle East. In particular, insiders in the Kremlin claim that it was after a lengthy telephone conversation between Vladimir Putin and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that the Israeli Air Force began destroying warehouses with heavy military equipment throughout Syria. Moreover, Russia even gave Israel the exact location of classified weapons depots, located in different parts of Syria for their further destruction. It is reported that in the last 48 hours alone, the Israeli Air Force has carried out more than 200 airstrikes on these armories, destroying a huge amount of heavy equipment, including artillery shells and small arms. Moreover, on December 14th, the Israeli Air Force also destroyed more than 30 military installations on the territory of the so-called IT Corps of the former Syrian army. As it turned out, these military facilities contained an electronic warfare system, radars, and communication antennas, which the United States planned to transfer to the Ukrainian army.
Not.
These Israeli actions provoked anger in Washington, as the Biden administration planned to transfer all these types of weapons to the Kiev regime. Some U.S. senators even regarded these Israeli actions as a stab in the back. According to them, Israel provided invaluable assistance to Vladimir Putin with these airstrikes. However, the official Tel Aviv denied all these accusations. According to the Israeli authorities, these weapons depots are being destroyed in Syria solely based on Israel's national security, since all these weapons could fall into the hands of terrorist groups. Whatever it was, Israel's actions played into the hands of Vladimir Putin, and the Ukrainian army was left without weapons from Syria.
Nice try.
Seeing all this, it becomes clear that Vladimir Putin surrendered Syria to Moscow's geopolitical rivals for a reason. Currently, the so-called US allies in the Middle East are engaged in the division of Syria. In particular, after the flight of Bashar al-Assad, Israel launched a ground operation in the southwestern part of Syria, and occupied significant territories of the country. Against this backdrop, numerous field commanders from the Tahrir al-Sham group declared that they would not only liberate the southern territories of Syria from the Israeli occupation, but also Jerusalem itself. However, it seems that these field commanders will soon have to fight with their Turkish masters as well. The fact is that on December 13th, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, speaking to reporters, promised to rectify the mistake of the First World War, and that such Syrian cities as Raqqa, Damascus, Aleppo, and Idlib would become part of Turkey. In addition, insiders in Ankara said that at a meeting with U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, the Turkish president also said that he had given the order to shoot down Israeli fighter jets if they expressed a desire to help Kurdish formations. Thus, before our eyes, the still current allies are gradually turning into enemies, ready to kill each other for the right to possess the mineral-rich territory of Syria. Everything that is happening now in Syria is very beneficial to Vladimir Putin, since the slipping out of control terrorists, the Kurds demanding independence, and the desire of Israel and Turkey to annex Syrian territories are very distracting to the West, led by the United States. At the moment, the Biden administration is making every effort to prevent the situation in Syria from spiraling out of control once and for all. All this has a very negative impact on the Western-backed Kiev regime, which continues to suffer a crushing defeat by the advancing Russian troops. Against this backdrop, many independent experts expressed confidence that after Russia's victory in Ukraine, Vladimir Putin will return Bashar al-Assad to Syria. Especially given the fact that supporters of the former Syrian president are still in Syria, and even creating partisan detachments, in order to liberate their country from the US, Turkish, and Israeli occupiers. By the way, the fact that Russian Spetsnaz rescued the famous Syrian general Sahil al-Hassan, and transported him to Moscow, indicates that we buried Syria too early. The fight for this gorgeous and beautiful country, just getting started.
Who insulted me. Called the murder and mayhem continues, above all in Gaza, but also in Lebanon, also in Syria. I've just been looking at a video, a Gaddafi demise style video, as Bashar al-Assad's cousin, someone called Talal Makhlouf, who was captured, handcuffed, put in the back of a pickup truck, and then savagely assailed. His face and head a mask of blood. I don't know the man. I don't know what, if anything, he has done. If you live by the sword, you're going likely to die by the sword. I'm not shedding any tears for any of the remnants of the Bashar al-Assad government. But I just remind you that these moderates are the ones that we are now paying for. Yes, that's right, the hard-pressed British taxpayer is now paying millions upon millions of dollars to the throat-cutting, head-chopping, heart and lung-eating fanatics who are enforcing dress codes on women of a different religion, who have banned Christmas, kicked over Christmas trees, destroyed lights, told Christian churches in the land of Jesus, who speak the language of Jesus, Aramaic, just in case you didn't know, have been told to cancel Christmas. Now, none of you might care about that. Some of you are more interested in the geopolitics. Some of you are more interested in the sectarian dimension of all of this. I'm equally interested in all of it. The statement that I made on Wednesday, which has attracted millions of views and thousands of comments and a wave of hostility from people who either support the sectarianism, which has brought the Arabs low to their lowest ever point in modern times, at least, or they are hirelings of the slave governments who rule their countries in the interests of empire. They get funded for academic posts. They get sinecures in state-owned media, as long as they parrot the prevailing orthodoxy, as long as they toe the dictatorship's line. There is a remarkable amount of hypocrisy going around. Really, truly, mind-numbingly, mind-bendingly, incredibly hypocritical. Apparently, dynastic dictatorships are a bad thing. Well, at least they're a bad thing in Syria. They're a good thing in Saudi Arabia, in Bahrain, in Kuwait, in the United Arab Emirates, in Jordan. They're fine there. Dynastic dictatorships are fine, as long as the dynastic dictator polishes the boots of the empire, recycles the God-given petrodollars that have been visited upon their lands and waters through the empire, kicks it back, in other words, in arms sales, in property sales, in the stock markets and in the banks of the empire. Do that and you are fine. There's only one Arab country left standing. His name is Algeria. And lo and behold, today Algeria accused France of beginning to stir up Islamist opposition to the secular republic in Algeria. I don't know the nuts and bolts of it, and the secular government in Algeria isn't much to write home about, to be sure, but it doesn't lick the boots of the empire. It maintains cordial relations with Russia and with China. The Algerian government says that France has reopened its corridor, formerly quite a busy one, to the Islamist rebels that tore Algeria apart in a civil war in the 1990s. The Algerian state is strong, but then that's what we thought about the Syrian state. So watch that space. It might well become a subject of our debate in due course. But going back to Syria. There is no Syria, of course, anymore. Israel occupies 3 times the territory of the Gaza Strip, now inside Syria, and can take whatever it likes. There may be back-channel discussions between them and the Americans about how far they can go, but the fanatics in the state of Israel have already decided that. They regard Syria as part of Greater Israel. They regard Lebanon and Jordan and parts of Saudi Arabia and parts of Iraq as Greater Israel. That's what the 2 blue parallel lines on the Israeli flag mean. From the Nile to the Euphrates, from the Nile in Egypt to the Euphrates in Egypt. Now, people used to think only cranks in Israel stood for that Greater Israel project, but it's a real thing now. After all, you don't have to physically occupy a government or a territory to rule it, as the good people of both Jordan and Egypt already know. The Saudis, to date, have refused to normalize relations with Israel, but most of their neighbors are slaves of the empire and have normalized those relations. I think of Qatar with its ferocious Al Jazeera television network, as long as the ferocity does not affect the red lines of the empire. Qatar has normal relations with Israel. It owns property in Tel Aviv. The last time I was there, the lift opened in my hotel and the Israeli president, Shimon Peres, walked out of the lift. I was there for the BBC's Doha debates. I've written about this many times before. The United Arab Emirates, ditto. The UAE owns a football team in Israel. Israel has an embassy in the UAE. The Israeli Secret Service, Mossad, roam the length and breadth of the UAE. And while these countries are a little shamefaced about it and don't normally crow about it, others are not so shy. Morocco, for example, on the far west of the Arab world, is the place where the killers from Gaza go for their holidays, for rest and recuperation. So from the Atlantic to the Persian Gulf, the Arab world is a sea of dictatorship, but only one dictatorship deserves to be brought down, and its dynastic leaders deserve to be hanged, drawn, and quartered. It so happens, entirely coincidentally, it's the only Arab dictatorship that still had the name Arab in the title of its state. It's the only Arab dictatorship that didn't have either open or secret relations with Israel. It's the only Arab dictatorship that allowed the Palestinian resistance to make their base there. It's the only Arab dictatorship that allowed the Palestinian resistance to be armed by the Islamic Republic of Iran through Iraq, through Syria, into Lebanon, and into the hands of the resistance. That may or may not be why it has been overthrown. It may be because they were dynastic. It may be because they were dictatorship. But in that case, it's a little difficult to understand why they, in particular, were singled out. Somebody asked me earlier on social media, what's your view? Why do you ask us to put up with dictatorships as long as they are anti-imperialist? Which is a fair question. It's a fair point. But so is this one. How come you never fight the pro-imperialist dictatorships? How come there's never any jihad in the lands of the Arab dictators who surrendered to Israel long ago, who collaborate with Israel, who belly dance for Israel and for the United States of America. How come you never make any jihads there? That's a fair question, isn't it? Maybe somebody will call us tonight and explain why this particular schizophrenia that afflicts that current, that trend of the Arab world. Now, a lot of people said I should not have washed my hands of 350 million Arabs. Of course, I did not. 2 of my sons are Arabs. In fact, their grandfather's grave in South Lebanon was just desecrated by Israeli invaders just yesterday or the day before. The picture emerged of his grave smashed to pieces and disturbed. His father's grave was even more revoltingly desecrated and could not be shown on the screen. I'm not washing my hands of my own sons. I'm not washing my hands of the thousands, tens of thousands of Arabs who are personal friends of mine. I'm not washing my hands of the good people who've never sold out in the sea of misery that I am describing. People like Dr. Man Bashur and other Nasserist Arab nationalist people, which is the current I have always supported and will always support. I'm not washing my hands of these. Above all, I'm not washing my hands of Palestine. I've told you so many times, if I can arrange it, the last word on my lips will be Palestine. I promised long ago, 50 years ago, that I would never leave the Palestinian cause alone, and it's a promise that I have kept. No, I'm washing my hands of the slave Arabs and their useful idiots, those who know that they are living in the land of the slave Arab rulers, but who nonetheless take the shilling and keep their mouths shut. That's why when they attack me, I have to go looking for who they are, because I never heard of them before. I'm washing my hands of those. I will no longer walk on the same path as you. I'm washing my hands of the sectarians. I've always hated sectarianism. It's just me. I spent so many years in my youth being called a Fenian bastard. I've always hated sectarianism. In Scotland, a mixed marriage is one between 2 white Christians of different denominations. I cannot fathom why, when the Arab world is being looted by imperialism, people would rather suck the boots of the imperial owner of their resources than associate with a Muslim who prays differently, who holds their hand differently in prayer, and has, in the grand scheme of things, minuscule doctrinal differences with them, who believe in the same God, who believe in the same Quran, who believe in confronting Israel and the empire, but you can't work with them because it's more important to you that your own current within your own sect, within your own religion, within your own country, that's more important to you. So that's fine. That's you. I've worked with you before. I will no longer work with you again. Our paths crossed, and now they have diverged. We were together on Egypt when the dictator Sisi overthrew the elected government there and murdered the elected prime minister there and murdered many hundreds of his supporters in a public square. We were together on that. We were together on Palestine. For decades, we went on convoys together, over decades, to try and break the siege on Gaza. We were together when Tony Blair and George W. Bush invaded and occupied Iraq, but we are no longer together because you expected me, having been your hero for my stand against the invasion of Iraq by the United States and the United Kingdom, to support an invasion by the United States and the United Kingdom of the neighboring country of Syria. And I will not do it. I will be with anyone for good and with no one for ill. And as to what's good, as to what is ill, only our own consciences can dictate that. And we'll all face the judgment day, and we'll all have to answer for what we did. So I'm concentrating now on the home front, on my job as the leader of the Workers' Party of Britain. And above all, I'm concentrating on trying to avoid my own country being the main driver of World War III against Russia. So you'll see me, after this kerfuffle is finally over, much more often speaking about British, American, and NATO matters in relation to the Russian front. And that's my judgment. That's my decision. I have limited time left, and I've decided that I want to spend that time concentrating on other things. For all those who insulted me, called me a white savior, having white savior complex. Well, first of all, I don't really pass as white. If you were to go out into this country and ask the racists how white I am, you'd discover most of them don't consider me white at all. Neither am I a savior. It was my job over 50 years to give solidarity to the Arab cause, to try and build a base in Western countries that would support that Arab cause. And I never asked for any thanks for it. You don't owe me anything for it. I did it because I believed it was my duty. But I never did get anything from it. Some people say I did it for votes. Have you any idea how hard it is to be a supporter of the Palestinian resistance in Western countries? Have you any idea how powerful Israel is in British and American politics? Have you any idea? I could show you my scars, literally my scars, except they're covered by this hat inflicted by somebody wearing an Israeli army insignia in a London street when I was a member of Parliament. If he'd had a weapon, I wouldn't be here now. I'd be dead. Like Rachel Corrie is dead. Like Tom Herndon is dead. You get dead for supporting the Arab cause in Western countries. You lose your job, as many have in the United States and Britain, for their brave efforts during the last 14 months on university campuses and in downtown demonstrations all over the Western world. Lost their jobs, got shadow banned, strangled, cut off, deplatformed. That's what you get in the West for supporting the Arab cause. Or like Richard Medhurst, like Craig Murray, like Kit Clarenberg, you get arrested at British airports and put in handcuffs and charged with terrorism. You get the police all over your case. You get them reading your emails. You get them reading your tweets. Whole sections of the security apparatus dedicated to surveillance upon them. That's what you get for supporting the Arabs in the West. So don't dare ever accuse me of having stood where I stood for personal benefit. Because I tell you something, in all modesty, if I had supported Israel rather than Palestine, I would not now be a superannuated former backbench member of parliament. I could have gone far, you know, but I chose the side my conscience told me to choose. Now, finally, because I
was overthrown on the 8th of December, and it has unleashed chaos. The United States and Israel took credit for overthrowing the Syrian government, and both countries are occupying Syrian land. The U.S. military has for nearly a decade been occupying 1/3 of Syrian territory in the east of the country, occupying the oil fields, which the U.S. had previously used to starve the Syrian government of oil revenue. And by combining that with brutal, suffocating sanctions, the U.S. basically destroyed the Syrian economy, which led to the collapse of the Syrian state. And since Syria's president Bashar al-Assad was overthrown, the White House has made it very clear that those U.S. troops are going to stay. Reuters reported, quoting the U.S. Deputy National Security Advisor, John Feiner, he said very clearly that those U.S. troops are not going anywhere. Like the U.S., Israel had also supported the extremist al-Qaeda-linked rebels in Syria who overthrew the government of Assad. And since then, the Israeli regime has colonized more and more Syrian territory. In fact, Israeli troops are just about 20 kilometers from the Syrian capital, Damascus. And Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has made it very clear that they're not going to leave. He has annexed Syrian territory in violation of international law. But meanwhile, as Israel is colonizing Syrian land and bombing Syria, the new de facto leader of Syria, who's the former leader of al-Qaeda, but he rebranded and he's backed by the West, his name is Abu Muhammad al-Julani, he made it clear in a speech that he does not want to challenge Israel in any way. He wants to have good relations with Israel. Once again, this is the former leader of Syrian al-Qaeda, who's now in charge, and Western governments have said very clearly that they are communicating with his regime, his al-Qaeda-light regime, and now the U.S. is very likely going to end its terrorism designation and recognize rebranded al-Qaeda as the ruler of Syria. So what we're essentially seeing is that the United States and its allies in the region are carving up Syria. They're treating it like a colony, and the U.S. is controlling the east. Israel is taking part of the west. NATO member Turkey has colonized part of the north of Syria, and they're making all of these plans to control the natural resources of the region. In fact, immediately after Bashar al-Assad was overthrown, Israel invaded Syria, and in just a few days, Israel carried out 400 airstrikes, relentlessly bombing Syria and destroying its state capacities. The New York Times, which is of course very pro-Israel, published an article boasting that Israel demolished Syria's military assets. It reported that Israel has destroyed Syria's navy, fighter jets, drones, tanks, air defense systems, weapons plants, and a wide array of missiles and rockets. So Syria has lost all capacity to defend itself, while multiple foreign countries are colonizing it and carving it up, like a colony. And what's so ironic about this New York Times propaganda is in the same article, just 2 paragraphs later, after it discussed how Israel is carving up and destroying Syria, the New York Times quoted Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu, who said, quote, "We have no intention to meddle in Syria's internal affairs," end quote. So while Israel is invading Syria and bombing it hundreds of times and destroying its military capabilities, Netanyahu says, we don't want to meddle in Syria. What a joke. And yet, wait, it gets even worse. Netanyahu also announced plans to double the number of illegal settlers occupying Syrian territory in the Golan Heights. Now, according to international law, the Golan Heights is Syrian sovereign territory that Israel first occupied in 1967. And ever since then, the Israeli regime has been illegally occupying the Golan. But now that the government of Assad has been overthrown, Israel announced that it completely annexed and colonized all of the Golan Heights, and Israeli troops invaded even further into Syrian territory, and Netanyahu has made it clear that he has no plans to leave. So this is part of a larger colonial project in which, with staunch U.S. support from both Biden and Trump, from Democrats and Republicans, Israel is expanding and trying to colonize sovereign territory, not only Palestinian territory like Gaza and the West Bank, but also southern Lebanon, which Israel has been trying to colonize, and now more and more territory in western Syria. And this comes mere days after the United Nations General Assembly voted to adopt a resolution that demanded that Israel withdraw from all of the Syrian Golan Heights, which have been illegally occupied since 1967. This resolution passed on the 3rd of December with the support of the majority of the international community. Only 8 countries voted against this resolution, which were the United States, the UK, Australia, Canada, Israel, and then a few small island nations in the Pacific. So it's essentially the Anglo-American alliance against international law in support of colonialism. I don't think it's a coincidence that the US, Australia, Canada, and Israel are all settler colonies founded by ethnically cleansing and expelling the indigenous population and colonizing their land. So Israel is doing exactly what these colonial powers did in the West, and that's why it's no surprise to see them continuing to support Israeli colonialism today. Now, for years, Israel has been supporting the al-Qaeda-linked rebels in Syria who were trying to overthrow the Syrian government and who did succeed. And Israeli newspaper, the Jerusalem Post, even admitted that Israel had been supporting al-Qaeda in Syria in its fight against the Assad government. Now, there are some very confused and ignorant people who claim that they both support Palestinian human rights and liberation, but they also supported the overthrow of the Syrian government by Israel, by the United States. And the Israeli media has been saying very clearly, boasting, as the Israeli newspaper Haaretz put it, quote, "The downfall of the Assad regime is Israel's victory," end quote. So they're not hiding the fact that Israel sees this as a major victory against a key part of the axis of resistance. Syria had provided support to resistance groups in Palestine, in Lebanon, fighting against U.S.-Israeli colonialism, defending their sovereignty, defending the rights of their people. And now that the Syrian government has been overthrown, this is a major blow to the resistance forces in the region. This is a major victory for U.S.-Israeli colonialism. In fact, after the Syrian government was overthrown, Netanyahu delivered a speech in which he announced that Israel is changing the face of the Middle East. He gave a speech in Hebrew, but there was an English language translation published. Of course, I should point out that Netanyahu is currently wanted by the International Criminal Court at The Hague over crimes against humanity he has been officially charged with that he has committed in Gaza. But while he's facing these charges at The Hague, Netanyahu boasted in this speech, quote, "The collapse of the Syrian regime is a direct result of the severe blows with which we have struck Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran." Later in the speech, Netanyahu boasted of doing severe damage to the axis of resistance. And then he said, quote, "As I promised, we are changing the face of the Middle East," end quote. And in this quest to completely reshape the region and colonize the region, Israel's next target is Iran. And after the Syrian government was overthrown, Netanyahu published a video online in which he gave a speech directed at the Iranian people, and he called for the people of Iran to overthrow their government. Iran has been one of the main targets of the United States for regime change for decades, ever since the Iranian Revolution of 1979 overthrew the US-backed dictator, the Shah, the king, who had ruled with an iron fist. And former US General and NATO Commander Wesley Clark famously revealed that the US military had made plans to overthrow 7 governments in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finally, Iran. Of those 7 countries, the only government that has not been completely destroyed or overthrown by the US is Iran. So that's the next target of the US and Israel. And an Israeli military officer published a thread on Twitter that went viral. He likely did this with the backing of the Israeli military, because military officers have to often get permission to post these kinds of things. And in this viral Twitter thread, he boasted that now that Assad has been overthrown in Syria and that pro-Western, pro-Israel forces linked to al-Qaeda are in power in Damascus, he boasted that Israel can now use Syria as a springboard for attacking Iran. And he posted a map that shows an Israeli fighter jet potentially going through southern Lebanon, through Syria, through Iraq, and then bombing Iran. So that's the next goal of the US and Israel. So while Israel and the US are making these plans for more and more war, what is happening inside Syria? What is the new regime doing? Well, the de facto leader of the new regime in Syria is the former leader of al-Qaeda. His name is Abu Muhammad al-Julani, and he has made it clear publicly, I'm reading from the Financial Times, quote, "Syria is not interested in conflict with Israel," rebel leader says, end quote. Now, the real name of this rebranded al-Qaeda leader in Syria is Ahmad Ashara. He was using the name al-Julani, but now that he's in power as part of yet another rebranding exercise, he distanced himself from al-Qaeda. He changed his name again. So now he's using his birth name, which is Ahmad Ashara. And he gave a speech in which he said that he has, quote, "no intention of confronting Israel," end quote. And then he reiterated, quote, "we are not looking to engage in a conflict with Israel," end quote. Instead of saying that he wants to liberate Syrian land, which is ironic because al-Julani is named after the Golan Heights, al-Julan. So instead of saying that he's going to liberate the Golan Heights, he's allowing Israel to continue colonizing the Golan Heights, to annex the Golan Heights illegally, and to take more and more Syrian land. And instead of actually challenging Israel, this rebranded al-Qaeda leader, what did he say? He said that the overthrow of Assad was a, quote, "victory over the dangerous Iranian project in the region," end quote. This is why the US and Israel have been supporting these al-Qaeda-linked so-called rebels for years, because they've been using them as puppets against Iran and resistance forces in the region. And here you have rebranded al-Qaeda leader in Syria openly saying, we have no issue with Israel. Our issue is with Iran. We're going to fight Iran on behalf of the US empire and Israeli colonialism. Now, the official name of the organization that this rebranded al-Qaeda leader is the chief of is HTS, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which previously was Jabhat al-Nusra, which was Syrian al-Qaeda. And then they rebranded as HTS. And a spokesman for HTS was asked about Channel 4 News in the UK about the fact that Israel has bombed Syria around 500 times. And he refused to say a single word in criticism of Israel.
Can I get your reaction to these Israeli airstrikes? We've had over 300 now.
Our priority is to restore security and services, to revive civilian life in institutions, and care for newly liberated cities. There are many urgent parts of day-to-day life to restore: bakeries, electricity, water, communications. So our priority is to provide those services to the people.
I understand it's not your priority, but are you honestly telling me that you have nothing to say about Israel striking 300 sites in this country?
Have no doubt, we want everyone to respect the sovereignty of the new Syria. This point is very important to us.
This is the official spokesman of the rebranded Al-Qaeda party that is now ruling Syria. And behind him, in the video, you can see the so-called Syrian Revolution flag, which is the green, black, and white flag with the red stars that the CIA-backed rebels were using, linked to Al-Qaeda. So this is the real face of the so-called Syrian Revolution. It's allowing Israel to bomb Syria hundreds of times, to colonize Syrian territory, and then telling Israel, we don't want any issues with you. We have no issues with Israeli colonialism. We don't care about the Palestinian people. Our goal is to fight Iran in alliance with U.S. imperialism and Israeli colonialism. That's the message. It's very clear. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has publicly revealed that Washington is communicating directly with these rebranded Al-Qaeda rebels who are running Syria, and the U.S. government is likely going to end its terrorism designation for HTS. Because originally, back in 2017, the U.S. State Department made it very clear that it did not recognize HTS as truly being independent from Al-Qaeda, from the previous Syrian Al-Qaeda affiliate, which was called Jabhat al-Nusra. The U.S. Embassy in Syria made it very clear in a statement that the core of Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, that's HTS, is Nusra, is Al-Qaeda, a designated terrorist organization. They said HTS is a merger of Al-Qaeda. And they even published, the U.S. Embassy in Syria published a wanted poster of now the man who's the leader of Al-Qaeda, Mohammed al-Julani, also known as Ahmad al-Shara. And they said, stop this terrorist. And the U.S. State Department offered a $10 million reward for the capture of this Al-Qaeda leader who's now running Syria. And not only is the U.S. government directly communicating with him and making it clear that Washington supports him, other Western governments like the UK are also establishing diplomatic contact with these Al-Qaeda rebranded extremists. And Britain announced that it's sending $50 million in so-called aid to the rebranded Al-Qaeda rebels who are now running Syria. So this is what the West would call material support for terrorism. This is a group that is still officially recognized as a terrorist organization, and they're giving it tens of millions of dollars in money, openly, publicly, not including all of the millions and millions of dollars that they gave it covertly. Of course, I should remind people that the CIA spent billions of dollars arming and training so-called moderate rebels in Syria over years, many of whom were linked to Al-Qaeda and ISIS, and they later joined Al-Qaeda and ISIS and gave them their weapons. The Washington Post reported that the CIA program to arm and train the Syrian rebels, which was called Operation Timber Sycamore, cost $1 billion a year, and it represented $1 out of every $15 in the CIA's overall budget. So now that the US and its allies have succeeded in overthrowing the Syrian government after a decade of proxy war, these rebranded Al-Qaeda rebels in Syria are hilariously following the same neoliberal playbook that Washington has imposed on countries around the world after regime change operations and CIA-sponsored coups. In fact, leaders of this rebranded Al-Qaeda group told Reuters in an exclusive interview that they plan on creating a free market economy. That's the language they used. So this very neoliberal rhetoric, and they criticized the previous government.
Syria was one of the only nations that wasn't controlled their banking systems by the small hats. Now they ceased it. China left, Iran left, and North Korea and Cuba and Venezuela. That's the only countries in the world.
Of Assad, which was ruled by the Ba'ath Party, which is an Arab nationalist movement that was influenced by socialism. And they criticized the previous state-led, public-oriented economy under the Ba'athist Party and said that instead they're going to have a neoliberal free market system. They're going to privatize all of the state-owned companies that haven't been completely destroyed and looted. They're going to cut social programs, cut healthcare, cut education. They're going to sell off everything to Western corporations, including their natural resources, which again, the oil reserves have been occupied by the US military. So what we're seeing is a complete looting of Syria by the US and its allies, by foreign corporations. And speaking of CIA operations, one of the groups involved in Syria and overthrowing the Assad government were extremist Salafi jihadists from Western China, from the Uyghur community. And they published a video from this extremist group linked to Al-Qaeda, which is called the Turkestan Islamic Party, which is directly affiliated with Al-Qaeda. They published a video in Syria in which they vowed to attack China, to try to carve up the western part of China, to break it off of China. This was reported by the British conservative newspaper, The Telegraph, boasting, quote, Uyghur fighters in Syria vow to come for China next. And they were quoting a video from the so-called Turkestan Islamic Party. Now, the US government has spent billions of dollars over decades supporting separatist groups to try to break up China in various different provinces. And in recent years, there's been a lot of propaganda about Western China and the Uyghurs. And in 2020, the Trump administration, the State Department of Mike Pompeo, removed the terror designation for the separatist extremist group called the East Turkestan Islamic Movement, which rebranded as the Turkestan Islamic Party, TIP, which again is affiliated with Al-Qaeda and has been active in Syria. They were fighting against the Assad government and helped to overthrow it in alliance with the US and Israel. And in 2020, when the Trump administration ended the terrorist designation, they claimed that there was no evidence that the ETIM, the East Turkestan Islamic Movement, existed anymore. They claimed that it was no longer a real group and that China was exaggerating. But now we can see Western newspapers boasting, publishing videos of these Salafi jihadist extremists affiliated with Al-Qaeda in Syria, vowing to wage war against China. And they're happy about it because the Western colonial powers have done this for decades, especially the US, but also some European countries have supported these extremist far-right groups inside China to try to break up Chinese territory, to destabilize the country. And now they're not even hiding it. And although these so-called rebels in Syria have been trying to rebrand because they're trying to get more open support from the West and claim that they have nothing to do with Al-Qaeda anymore, they still share the same extremist Salafi jihadist ideology. In fact, immediately after throwing the Assad government, the new Minister of Justice in Syria announced that they're imposing harsh Islamic law and preventing women from being judges. So they're taking away the rights of women. They're going to try to turn Syria into Afghanistan. Of course, the Taliban in Afghanistan had its origins also in a CIA operation. In the 1980s, the CIA spent billions of dollars arming and training extremist Salafi jihadist fundamentalists to wage a proxy war against the Soviet Union. And then after they succeeded, they created the Taliban and they created Al-Qaeda, which have their direct origins in the CIA program, which was called Operation Cyclone. Well, here we are today in Syria. These far-right extremists are trying to take away the rights of women, whereas previously in Syria, out of all of the countries in the region, in the Middle East and West Asia, women had the most rights in Syria. The highest levels of equality were in Syria and also in Lebanon, which are countries that are being destroyed by the US and Israel. And previously, when this rebranded Al-Qaeda group, HTS, previously ruled Syria's northern Idlib province, they stoned 3 women to death on accusations of adultery. These are the fascists who now rule all of Syria. But the West wants us to believe that suddenly these Al-Qaeda members have changed and they're now moderates and they're going to support democracy and human rights. That's the ridiculous propaganda narrative. So the situation is looking very bad for the people of Syria. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to try to tell people something positive or optimistic, because the reality is that it's looking very, very bleak. But I will be here at Geopolitical Economy Report, constantly analyzing the situation, providing more information and context for people. I am Ben Norton, the editor-in-chief of Geopolitical.
Hi, everybody. Today is Monday, December 16th, and our friend Larry Johnson is back with us. Welcome back, Larry.
I'm glad to be called your friend. Thank you.
Larry, let's get started with this statement by Bashar al-Assad.
Yeah.
And he's talking about what has happened in Syria and how he left Syria. What are the important points in this statement, in your opinion?
Well, the most important point is he takes no responsibility for what happened. He's, here is a man that, now with the benefit of hindsight, you could say if he had made improving the lives of the Syrian people a priority, if over the last 5 years he'd been begging Russia, China, Iran for economic support, for money to upgrade and improve the lives of his people who were suffering under sanctions. Yeah, that would have said something about him, but he didn't. He was, I guess he thought he was Jay Leno. Jay Leno's a comedian who was a TV host of The Tonight Show in the United States, and he was known for collecting cars. So he has it's an enormous collection of cars. Well, that was Bashar al-Assad. Assad was collecting luxury automobiles, taking care of his family, making sure they had good jobs. And yet, what's really sort of shocking about it is he realized his time was coming to an end as the leader of Syria. He made no provisions for several members of his family, cousins and such. He basically left them out, hung them out to dry, and ended up getting killed. So Bashar al-Assad will go down in history as just an afterthought, a man of no consequence, a man who lost his country and helped destroy it. It's like, go out and ask the average person on the street to name the last president of Afghanistan. I don't even remember the guy's name. He's a nobody, and that's what Bashar al-Assad is a nobody who's not going to be of any consequence in negotiating future political deals. He's not going to be somebody that folks feel they need to go talk to. So this is the statement he finally put out. It's pretty shameful, in my view.
He didn't mention any sort of detail about that day, but he said that until December 8th, he was in Syria, in a Russian base. And then he decided after the fall of Damascus, he has decided to leave Syria.
Yeah.
And Larry, how do you see right now the role of Russia in the whole situation? Because they have tried to do everything to save him, it seems, the way that he's talking about it.
Well, I've used in the past the illustration of, a friend, not necessarily a family member who's a drug addict or an alcoholic, and you keep trying to intervene to help them, and they keep going back, buying more drugs, drinking more booze. At some point, you have to just step back and let them hit bottom, and sometimes they'll die. That's where Russia is. Russia was stepping in to try to prevent the spread of. It wasn't so much the spread of radical Islam as it was recognizing that the United States and Israel were trying to use Syria at the time as leverage to put pressure on Russia. Russia thwarted that pressure for a while. But now, I think they've Putin and his generals took stock of the situation and recognized that there was nothing to be gained by Russia by staying involved and fighting these other forces there on the ground, because that was not where the primary battle is being waged. The primary battle right now, at least militarily, is on the ground in Ukraine. But there's also a broader, let's call it diplomatic, political battle being waged against BRICS and all countries that are trying not to fall under the control of the United States. So the United States is actively promoting unrest in Georgia. They are working to split off Armenia from its traditional relationship with Russia, and so far, the president of Armenia, Pashinyan, is going along with that plan. So the West is intent on trying to crush and destroy Putin, destroy the Russian state, and take control of the place. I can't emphasize that enough. That is, it's diabolical. It really is. The United States can't leave others alone, and that's why I come back and use the term the United States has become like a serial rapist. That we're going to violate every other country if we can, just for our own selfish needs. And I think it's morally wrong. It's ultimately going to, I think, destroy the United States. You can't embark on this kind of imperialist ambition and then hope to remain intact and accepted and influential in the world. You don't see people lining up to say, man, boy, those Americans, they're great. I love to be around them. I think it's just the opposite.
Al-Mayadeen reported that Israel bombing last night.
Mm-hmm.
It was a huge bombing in Syria's Tartus.
Right.
And it caused an earthquake as much as great as 3.2.
3.5, that's 3.0, 3.2.
Richter scale.
Yeah.
Larry, what's going on right now in the mind of Israelis? Because they're attacking, they're just destroying everything.
Yeah.
And what's their fear, in your opinion, if they're winning?
Well, they've climbed into bed with radical Sunni Islamists. And the belief of those Islamists ultimately is that the Jews have no right to rule or reign over Jerusalem. So, although right now they're working, the Israel, the Zionists are in bed with Al-Jalani and HTS, and are working with MIT, the Turkish intelligence organization. Nonetheless, I think Israel's not taking any chances, because they recognize these guys would take those weapons and use them against them, or they're also wanting to make sure they don't make it the way into the hands of Hezbollah. So, Israel's always played this double game. Back in, was it 80, 81, right after the rise of the Ayatollah Khomeini and the Iranian Revolution. Israel was dealing directly with Iran at that time and providing weapons to Iran in order to try to defeat Iraq. They were more concerned with Saddam Hussein back then. So, Israel's always shown, despite the claims that they are not, that they strongly oppose all radical Islam, in terms of their actual conduct, they'll make a deal with the devil. There's no principle. It's all about survival. And, if you have to, cut off part of your arm to survive, they'll cut off part of their arm. That's sort of the mentality. So, what they're doing here is they're going to destroy everything that could potentially be used militarily. But Israel now creates a problem for itself. It's not like it's got 20 million people that are crammed in that small area in Israel. And boy, oh man, we need Lebensraum. We need more living space. We don't have enough space for us. Just the opposite's been happening since the start of the war with Hamas a year ago, October. An estimated 1 million Israelis have bailed out, gone overseas, gone to the United States principally, or some other spots in Europe. So they don't have a manpower surplus. And yet they're now expanding the territory where they're going to have to provide security, and they're going to have to try to control movements of supplies back and forth across the border. And when you look at particularly at the border between Syria and Iraq, uncontrollable. No, neither the United States nor Turkey have the manpower or are going to commit the resources required to cover that border and prevent smuggling. And I've heard that there has been smuggling going on in that region for probably at least 2,000 years, maybe longer. So the notion that this is going to suddenly come to an end and Hezbollah is not going to have any weapons, I think that's silly. Hezbollah still remains, from Israel's point of view, a threat, and one that it's not. It still hopes that the Israelis still hope that they can push Hezbollah north of the Litani River, but I don't know if they will achieve that. I don't think they will. But this is just a recipe for chaos. And then add to it, if this isn't enough, you've got these voices in Israel calling for them to attack Iran right now. Let's go hit them. Let's go bomb Iran, because we'll be able to destroy their nuclear force or their nuclear research program. They're obsessed with that. And I believe if they do that, this will turn this into a global war. This will not be just an isolated regional war, because I do not believe that Iran is so weak that it would be overcome by an Israeli attack and would be unable to respond. Just the opposite. I think Iran's held off on retaliating for the October 1st attack. And I think part of that has come in as a result of consultations with Russia, where Russia's been advising restraint, because they're looking at it more from the political standpoint of Iran gaining some influence in the region as not being a bunch of crazed religious fanatics, but actually a country that's carefully weighing pros and cons of actions and trying to act in accordance with international rules.
It seems what's going on right now in Syria is a huge question mark in the mind of not only Russia and Iran, but also the United States and Israel.
And Turkey. Let's not forget Turkey.
Yeah. But Larry, it seems that the way that Bashar al-Assad was talking about their economy, their army, it was totally devastated. It was a huge burden on the shoulders of Iran and Russia. Right now, it's all transferred on the shoulders of Turkey, in my opinion. To some extent, Israel and the United States, because they're in that region right now. They're the United States supporting Kurds, and Israel is at their border. That's why they're attacking, they're destroying everything. Don't you think that in a long run, this may influence or may improve the situation with the resistance? Because the main problem between Turkey and Iran was the situation in Syria. Right now, that's gone for the time being.
How's it gone? Explain that to me.
Because it's in the hand of Turkey. Right now, Iran is not there. It's just Turkey together with the United States and other players. That's why Iran is not participating in what's going on right now. It seems to me that right now there is no that, because so far we had some sort of attrition between Iran and Turkey in terms of Syria.
Well, actually, I don't think Iran has completely backed out and cut all ties with the various groups, particularly with the Shia communities in Syria. I guarantee you Iran's still in contact with them. They're not abandoning them. What came out over the weekend, I heard Alexander Mikuris, I don't recall the particular article who wrote it, but in this article, they're making the point that, in fact, Syrian intelligence had been collaborating with Israeli intelligence and targeting IRGC commanders that were moving in and out of Syria, and that the Israelis used that information to target and murder some of those IRGC commanders. So from that standpoint, the Syrians are playing a very bad double game. From the perspective right now of who's in control of Syria, which part of Syria depends. And the reality is nobody's in control. HTS, Harat Tahrir al-Sham, has been dressed up as, I mean, it's really bizarre, because HTS is claiming to be this moderate, almost secular, progressive group of reformers. They were beheading people, for God's sake. And up in Idlib, where they were in charge, very brutal. Wouldn't allow, women had to be covered. They had to be covered. And there are already reports that Christians are being attacked and murdered, as well as Shia, as well as Alawites. So this isn't under anybody's control. And then to add into the mix, so you've got a group of Kurds that are aligned with Syria, aligned with Turkey, and then you got a group of Kurds that are aligned with themselves. They want to be free. They're backed more by the United States. So you look at the United States and Turkey trying to figure out how to avoid getting into a war with each other over the Kurds. And the Kurds are important because they control basically the oil that is in Syria that's been discovered and can be pumped out, can be a source of income. But there is no effective government. The people, quote, working for the government, they're not collecting a salary. Who's paying it? It's not clear that there's a central bank still in place that's functioning and dealing, facilitating commerce. Plus, you've got all these economic sanctions that were still imposed on Syria. So, who's in charge? HTS is just, Jelani is just a figurehead at this point. And he has not demonstrated himself to be a political force with a great reservoir of support. It's just the opposite.
Do you think that in Israel, they do feel that in a long run, they're going to be the winner, or it's just a result for a short term? Even I would argue for Netanyahu and his position right now, because he's not in a good position right now in Israel.
Well, from a short-term perspective for the Israelis, man, they think that they've won the lotto. Oh man, with the lottery, we're billionaires. They've got all the money they need. They think. Then they're going to find out, hey, they've imposed a new tax policy. The government's going to take 80% of what you want. they're going to discover that having created this kind of chaos in Syria, because at least, again, as we saw with some of the stories coming out, that when Assad's in power and you have the Syrian intelligence and the Syrian military, there are at least people who had an institutional incentive to exercise some control over particular areas, prevent certain activities. Now you don't have that. It's now like anything goes, and there are criminal organizations in Syria, some that are involved with drug trafficking. Those folks have the organization. They've got the money. They've got the financial incentive. And, how do they operate? They'll pay you off to, not bother them, or they'll kill you if you get in their way. And I don't think Hayat Tahrir al-Sham is strong enough, nor is ISIS strong enough to counter that particular influence. So what you're looking at here is a chaotic state. And that means the people are going to be moving, trying to find some safety, some security somewhere, which means increased refugee flows into Turkey, into Jordan, into Iraq, into Lebanon. Israel's not going to let them in. They'll say the Druze communities there along the border said, "Oh, we want to be Israelis now." Okay, go for it, guys. Get to be second-class citizens.
Do you think that the future of Syria would be united, or they're going to break it down in different parts?
It's going to be what Yugoslavia once was. Got Croatia, Serbia, Bosnia, Herzegovina. It's going to break up. The unifying element's gone. The identity of we are Syrians. That's an arbitrary label anymore. What's more important is I'm Sunni, I'm Shia, I'm Druze, I'm Kurdish. Those ethnic identities, it's actually sort of going backwards into the past. And those are apparently what's going to dominate going into the future. And that's why, what's really fascinating, here we are a week later after the sudden collapse. And because it was initially portrayed, oh, Russia's pulling out, Russia's fleeing in panic. You've not seen a reprise of what happened in Afghanistan to the United States, where the United States literally was in a panicked rush to get the hell out, and left behind thousands of Afghanis who had collaborated with them and were then going to face some retribution from the Taliban. No, in this case, Russia's still got its bases. In fact, it's reported that Turkey is encouraging Russia to stay. But Russia's, they're saying, oh, yeah, thanks for the invite. Keep packing up, guys. We're moving. I think they're going to pack up and ultimately pull out of the air base that's up along the border with Turkey. They may keep the refueling station there at Tartus, but it's not a major naval base. Again, I think the West exaggerates the military importance of that to Russia, and it is fascinating that Washington is taking great glee in what they see. Oh, this is a real black eye for Russia. Just compare what's happened in Syria with what happened in Afghanistan. Doesn't even begin to compare. Russia's not leaving behind $100 billion worth of weapons. Russia's packing its stuff up and taking it with them. This is ours. We're not leaving it here behind. So it's just, the hypocrisy of the West on this. it's to the point that I can't tolerate it anymore.
And you mentioned that Turkey is trying to convince or to encourage Russians to stay in Syria, but this attack has happened that we talk about. Huge bombing in Syria, in Tartus, is the same city that the Russian base is in.
Right.
Do you think it has anything to do with Russians and their type of movement in that region, or they're attacking something else?
No, I think they're attacking. If Israel hit a Russian base, then Russia would be retaliating. I think Israel's playing a dangerous game in doing that. It is, while this can be called, let's call this a tactical victory for Israel right now, it doesn't change its strategic outlook for the future. It doesn't mean that Israel is going to be more secure. I argue it will be less secure. And it doesn't mean that this is going to expand Israel's influence in the region where everybody signs up and wants to be a friend with Israel. The horrors that they are committing against the Palestinian people are profound. What's still, is it shocking that there are so many in the Arab Muslim world that they talk as if they support the Palestinians, but their actions they don't. It is the Palestinian people face one of the greatest tragedies in human history, and the level of death and destruction being inflicted upon them by Israel is just unconscionable. It's inhumane.
Larry, when you look at Israel before the conflict in Syria and right now in the aftermath of the fall of Assad in Syria, do you think that they're gaining any sort of momentum right now? Because their economy is not doing great. It didn't change. Their situation in southern Lebanon didn't change, but they have cut the connection between Iran and Hezbollah. The situation in Gaza didn't change. How about when you put all these pictures together, do you think that in Israel they're still believing that Netanyahu is doing an excellent job in their benefit, or they're still thinking of Netanyahu the way it was before what has happened in Syria?
Well, just this morning or today, so on Monday, a bunch of Israelis were injured running to bomb shelters because Yemen launched a new missile that was coming into central Israel. So, they can do all the celebrating they want. Syria was not bombing them with rockets and missiles. Yes, Syria was seen as an intermediary, allowing the Iranians to supply weapons to Hezbollah. But, the news that's now starting to come out shows that at least over the last 6 months to a year, Syria was actually not actively cooperating in that. If anything, they were creating roadblocks. Nonetheless, Iran still found a way to provide and resupply Hezbollah. I don't think that's going to go away. Is it going to create new challenges for Iran to resupply Hezbollah? Yeah, absolutely. But that's not going to disappear. So this fight is going to continue, which is why Israel is making noise that it need to destroy Iran. That's the goal of the West too. They are obsessed with. They've convinced themselves, Iran's got all these grave internal political problems, and all we need to do is, again, push, and then it'll collapse like a house of cards, just like Syria. You tell me, you're in touch with relatives in Iran. Is Iran in chaos? Is Iran, the people suffering economically to the point that they're ready to turn on the established clerics? I don't believe so.
The economy of Iran is not in a good shape, Larry. because they have been under sanctions, but it's not that fragile to do these things. It's whoever thinks this way, I think, is totally disconnected with the reality of Iran.
And that's and the other element to this is that with Iran joining BRICS, it's going to create some economic opportunities and opening that will allow them to circumvent the pain that they've been inflicted by the sanctions. So, but that said, Israel is obsessed with destroying Iran. And I think it's going to make a grievous tactical and strategical mistake if they proceed in going after their plan to try to dethrone the mullahs. But we're not dealing with rational thinking people here. We're dealing with deep-seated emotions grounded in religious, theological commitments. And when you're dealing with that, you're not dealing with folks stop thinking rationally. You can let me just give you an illustration that in both the Hebrew Bible, the Genesis, Bereshit, I think is the Hebrew word for it, or the Christian version, they all say the same thing. And there's, you can take one passageway where God says, God supposedly one person, God says, let us make man in our image. So if you go out and try to start talking to devout Christians or devout Jews or even devout Muslims about that, saying, hey, that sounds like God's a plural, not a not one God, but there may be more than one. Oh, man. Talk about setting your hair on fire. I mean, when I've raised stuff like that, I've been attacked, and you get, it just awakens in people something that they are wrong. We're going to show you. But my point is, you can't have a rational discussion about that with a lot of people where they can just separate their emotion from their religious faith. And that's part of what's driving Israel in this. They cannot separate their conviction that all of this land is given to them by God according to the book that they wrote, because the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Torah, they were assembled by Jewish scribes, scholars, whatever word you want to use for them, that were being held by the Babylonians before, when Babylon was not yet Persia, later to be Iran. But, that's where they assembled that book. And yet they use that book entirely to justify killing Palestinians and driving them from the land. In fact, taking over Syria too, because they use that book to say, hey, we get the land to the Euphrates. So they get parts of Syria and, parts of Iraq. They're serious about this. And, folks that say, oh, that's just ancient way of thinking, they don't really mean it. They absolutely do. So, that's one of the other elements that's driving all of this conflict that people don't want to address. This religious conviction that God has allowed you to do X, Y, and Z.
In your opinion, how do they see Erdogan in Israel? Do they feel that he's a kind of leader that can just be against them, go after them, and maybe fight them, or they feel that he's not going to do that? He would be the friend of Israel at the end of the day.
Who's that? Jelani, you mean?
I'm talking about what's going on in the mind of Israelis considering Erdogan and his position right now.
Well, if the Israelis have any grasp on reality, any sanity left, they wouldn't trust Erdogan for a minute. Erdogan wants to he would like to recreate the Ottoman Empire and take control of territory and be the big man on campus. I think we talked about this last week, where Erdogan made some crazy statement about, there are only two rulers in the world that know what they're doing, and that's me and Vladimir Putin. It's like, dude, they're already discovering again that despite the backing of HTS and climbing into bed with the Israelis and with Western intelligence, they still don't have complete control of the situation in Turkey. So yeah, it's a marriage of convenience. The Israelis will use the Turks will use the Israelis, and each side thinks that they can control the other. It's a nice fantasy, but I don't think it's realistic.
Who has the upper hand right now in Syria? The United States, having Kurds, and maybe negotiating with these people with HTS, just removing sanctions, making some sort of deals with them, or Turkey with all the support that they have provided the HTS with during the conflict.
I don't think anybody's got the upper hand. So down around the Golan, yeah, Israel's got the upper hand there. They've got the troops present. They've got the Air Force, bombing away. So they've got some sway, some control there, superior to that of either the United States or the Turkey. Go up to the north, along the border. Well, Turkey has some advantages there, clear advantages, but they're now faced with the challenge of what to do with the Kurds in eastern Syria. There were reports 2 days ago that they had actually started launching military incursions against them, but the Kurds are fighting back. And those Kurds, up to this point, have been backed by the United States. So now the United States has got to figure out, while the 35 days left in Joe Biden's, he's down to almost his last month in office. So that means Blinken, Sullivan are desperately trying to screw things up, set the world on fire. Are they going to stick with the Kurds and help the Kurds fight the Turks, which means you've basically got two alleged allies of NATO fighting each other through proxies? Or is the United States going to say to the Kurds, "Hey, it's been nice knowing you," and walk away and leave them, like the United States has left so many others over the last 60 years? Starting, the Vietnamese, that's the Cambodians, Laotians. The United States, we got your back. It's not a message of support. That's like a warning from a prison rapist. Yeah, we got your back. So there's nobody. That's the point. There's nobody in control of Syria. Syria doesn't exist anymore. You got balkanized patches. Different states are exercising different control over different parts.
Why is the United
sorting that out is going to be the problem.
Why is the United States supporting Kurds, Larry? It's just because they want to have some sort of leverage in that region to make some sort of chaos. I don't know, whatever is in their mind to manage the situation. And is it going to work for the United States to go after some sort of deal with Turkey, or they're going to keep the same way that they've been doing so far and just helping them against Turkey?
Well, initially, I think one of the motivations was getting access to the oil that was in that region, and found that the Kurds would be far more accommodating, easier to deal with than either the Iraqis, whose oil it was initially, or the Syrians, whose oil it was. Because you've got, that area bleeds over from an ethnic standpoint. The Kurds are not clearly demarcated as being in either Syria or Iraq. They're in both. they're a very good friend of mine, Ambassador John Menzies, who was he was actually the U.S. ambassador in Sarajevo when that whole place was coming apart. He was he took a job in Kurdistan at the American University as sort of the head of that university, and then developed a lot of close relationships with the Yazidis and some of the other Kurdish groups. So there's always sort of been this seeing the Kurds as being pro-American also. And so from that standpoint, there's been a foundation of support that seeing the Kurds as being much more friendly to U.S. Assistance than any other country. But, it's sort of natural because, when you're the Kurds, the Syrians, the Turks, the Iraqis, the Iranians, they're not on your side. They see you as a potential problem, as someone that has to be controlled. So, that there's not a quick, easy solution to that. I mean, that's been going on for good God for, centuries. So this is the fact that that's going to remain an irritant in the relationships between the United States and Turkey and Erdogan. That's not going to get resolved anytime soon.
Larry, do you know Graham Fuller?
I know who Graham Fuller is. Yes.
Yeah.
We're not personal friends.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk with him at 3 p.m.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're gonna discuss the situation in that. He has work.
Let's talk about how the events in Syria affect Iran and Iran's future. Frankly speaking, Iran is next on the chopping block. You guys remember that video of General Wesley Clark where he's outlining the plan of the Project for a New American Century for their regime change projects in the region. And, obviously the two toughest nuts to crack on that list were Syria and Iran. Now they've taken care of Syria. It took them decades and decades and decades to do. And by doing that, they've crippled the Palestinian cause, of course. But they're not done, are they? I just showed you, we just went through how destroying Syria and its defenses paves the way and makes it easier for Israeli jets to bomb Iran. Remember, they have to pass over Iraq, of course, but Iraq is itself occupied by the United States. Iraq was demilitarized and, well, rather defanged. Much in the same way that Syria just was by the West. So, nevertheless, let me play this video from Netanyahu, and he filmed this on the 12th of December. So this is after they've destroyed Syria, okay? And remember, the day that the Lebanon ceasefire started, what did Netanyahu say then? He said Bashar al-Assad is playing with fire. I mean, the Israelis had issued warnings, quote unquote, or threats, we should actually call them, to Syria many, many times before, right? But that was a tactical, move in order to take the focus away from the genocide in Gaza, give the Israeli troops in Lebanon a rest, and then once and for all get rid of Syria in the interests of Israel, Turkey, America, and the West. But now Iran is next on the chopping block.
People of Iran, as we see history unfold before our very eyes, I can only imagine what you're feeling right now. Your oppressors spent over $30 billion supporting Assad in Syria. Today, after only 11 days of fighting, his regime collapsed into the dust. Your oppressors spent billions supporting Hamas in Gaza. Today, their regime lies in ruins. Your oppressors spent over $20 billion supporting Hezbollah in Lebanon. In a matter of weeks, most of Hezbollah's leaders, its rockets, and thousands of its terrorists went up in smoke. The money your oppressors stole from you literally went up in smoke. You must be furious imagining the new roads, schools, hospitals that could have been built with the tens of billions of dollars your dictators wasted backing terrorists who lose over and over and over again. Do you know why Iran's oppressors keep losing? It's not only...
Yeah, because of Western sanctions and because you won't leave the region alone. How about that?
Because they're incompetent and cruel. They are. It's because they seek to conquer other nations, to impose fundamentalist tyranny on the Middle East, on the entire world.
Yeah, Greater Israel is a Teheranian project. Everybody knows that, you know. President Raisi came up with it himself. I mean, the nerve. Look who's talking about conquering other nations. The nerve, honestly. There is no one but America, but the United States, the Western Israel, conquering other nations and colonizing them and stealing their resources. Jesus, he's literally moving into Damascus as he's filming this.
The only thing Israel seeks is to defend our state. But in so doing, we're defending civilization against barbarism. The historic events we witness today are a chain reaction to the pounding of Hamas, the decimation of Hezbollah, the targeting of Nasrallah, the blows we delivered to the Iran regime's axis of terror. And all this came, as President Trump pointed out this week, because of Israel and its fighting success. I want to make clear, Israel wants peace. We want peace with all those who truly want peace with us.
Yeah, Israel, they just want the freedom and the peace to commit genocide and make the Goyim and the Amalek submit to their rule, and they just want to be able to steal gas and resources and Lebensraum, you know, and promised land in peace. Come on, they just want the security to be able to impoverish others. Why do you deny them this right?
And I have no doubt that you, the people of Iran, know this. I know that just as we want peace with you, you want peace with us. But you suffer under the rule of a regime that subjugates you and threatens us. You know what this regime is truly terrified of? It's terrified of you, the people of Iran. And one day...
That's rich coming from a guy who faces weekly protests. I mean, honestly.
I know that. One day this will change. One day Iran will be free. Women, life, freedom, zan, zandagi, azadi. That is the future of Iran. That is the future of peace. And I have no doubt that we will realize that future together a lot sooner than people think. I know, and I believe, we will transform the Middle East into a beacon of prosperity, progress, and peace. Thank you.
All right, so this is where we're at. This is where we're at right now, okay? You guys know I've been covering the nuclear deal for several years now. Iran followed that deal to the letter. Okay, they signed it in 2015, 2016, and Iran did everything, right? They allowed the IAEA inspectors unfettered access to all the facilities. They let them install these tamper-proof seals, cameras, run tests wherever they please, come and go as they please, and of course they are signatories of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, the NPT, and of course the Additional Protocol. Israel has signed neither. Israel has signed neither the NPT nor the ban on chemical weapons. Just so you remember, Israel has an arsenal of nuclear weapons. It has it. And the United States is the only country in history that's used nuclear weapons and on civilians. But the point is that Iran followed the nuclear deal, and it did exactly as agreed, as was pointed out, and it tried to appease the West in exchange for sanctions relief. Okay? Then Donald Trump gets to power, and being the good little Zionist dog that he is, he pulls out of the nuclear deal, which is great for Israel. He reimposes sanctions on Iran, which is great for Israel, and of course the neoconservatives. Excuse me. And then, of course, he kills Soleimani, He kills Abu Mahdi Mohandes with the targeted assassination with the drone strike, and then he imposes Caesar Act sanctions on Syria. He moves the embassy from Jerusalem from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. He declares, as if it belongs to him, that Jerusalem is Israel's capital, that the Golan Heights, which Israel has stolen from Syria, are Israeli. He does every single thing that the Israelis want because he's a big fat Zionist, and he's actually done more than all the U.S. presidents before him for Israel. Okay, that's how much of a Zionist he is. So Iran did everything, and for a year after Donald Trump pulled out of the nuclear deal, for an entire year, okay, the Iranians are still upholding the nuclear deal as if nothing happened, and they didn't have to do that. It's not a prerequisite in the agreement. They did not have to do that, but they did it anyway to provide the Americans with an off-ramp to allow them to afford them the opportunity to come back into the agreement peacefully without any escalation. Americans didn't care, right? So then afterwards, what happened is that the Israelis blew up the Natanz nuclear facility. They assassinated an Iranian nuclear scientist as well, Mohsen Fakhrizadeh. They did it outside of Tehran. And then the New York Times published a story to glorify it, blah, blah, blah. And the Soleimani assassination happened. And so all of these events, at every turn, the Iranians, they started pulling back, or rather rolling back their commitments to the agreement. Now, the agreement says, under Article 26, 36, and 37, that if the Americans leave and if they reimpose sanctions on Iran, Iran does not have to uphold the deal. It's logical. If you sign a contract with someone and they rip it up, you're not bound to the contract anymore, are you? How can you rip up a deal and then say that, oh, you still got to follow it even though I left? I mean, that's the American position. That is how nonsensical the Americans are. But even despite that, the Iranians are still in the nuclear deal to this day, but they rolled back the commitments in the sense that they were supposed to keep the limit at 3.67%. Okay, so enrich uranium only up to 3.67%, and that's commonly the amount that you need for civilian purposes, right? Just for nuclear energy. Now, if you want to build a nuclear bomb, you need 90% enriched uranium, and you need several kilograms worth of that stuff in order to build a single bomb. But then the Iranians said, okay, no, we're going to enrich up to 20% now. You can come back to the deal and lift the sanctions and we'll stop. But the Americans don't listen. And then they went up to 60%, okay? And even up until 3 weeks ago, the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, Rafael Grossi, he goes to Tehran and he meets with the Iranians, and they give him a tour of Fordow, they give him a tour of Natanz. These are the two largest nuclear sites, and they showed him that, look, we can stop enriching uranium at 60%. We can stop right now, and they didn't just say that. They showed him that they've taken the first step towards that goal. In a technical capacity, and just like kind of as an act of good faith, to show that, look, you can go back and tell the Americans and Britain and the UK and France and Germany that we can really do this if they're willing to play ball, if they're willing to respect the deal and, go back to maybe, not normalizing ties, but just to have a détente, okay? A thawing of ties, of relations. And he goes back. Of course, that message is transmitted, and the Iranians even said that they'll allow new IAEA inspectors to come because they had blacklisted some of them as one of these measures where they're pulling away from their commitments. It was always tit for tat, tit for tat. The Iranians never escalated. They always responded, and only in a very, very limited manner. They never went, okay, let's build a bomb. They never did that. And they have a religious decree against it, as a matter of fact. What happens afterwards? They have a board of governors meeting at the IAEA in the UN in Vienna, and that's basically a quarterly meeting. You have 35 members in it, and half of the board, just over half, abstained. But this motion still passed where they condemned Iran. They said, you have to explain these particles that we found. We want you to lift your ban where you've designated these inspectors, IAEA inspectors, as you blacklisted them. We want you to do this and that, but never, of course, against the Americans, right? They never condemned the United States, just Iran. So Iran was like, okay, you know what? Screw this. And the next morning, literally the next morning, they fired up these brand new centrifuges and just kept on going, enriching uranium at 60%. Okay? So all of this to say that, and of course, this goes without saying, they tried to bring the United States back into the nuclear deal in 2022, and then the Ukraine war started, and the Americans dropped the ball. They didn't want to continue with negotiations and they were this close. It was almost a done deal. They had a draft ready and everything, but the Americans dropped the ball. My point here is that I've covered this closely, and I've seen all of the stuff, the ups and downs. At every single point, what happened is that the Iranians were ready to negotiate, they were ready to de-escalate, they were ready to do anything to get the sanctions lifted, and every single time, the West respond with escalation, and Israel responds with escalation. They murder someone, they blow a facility up, they impose sanctions. You can't reason with them. You've just seen what's happened in Gaza. You've just seen what's happened to Lebanon. You've just seen what's happened to Syria. Iran is next. The Israelis have wanted this for a long time, just like they've wanted this with Syria for a long time. Many lawmakers in Iran are now saying, screw this, we need a nuclear bomb. The Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, needs to reverse his religious decree, the fatwa, banning nuclear bombs because they cause mass destruction. And we need to go and just build one. And by the way, Iran can build one very easily because they have some of the best scientists in the world. They've got a young generation of extremely smart people. They're some of the best in STEM and nanotechnology, rocket science. They've got a space program now, you name it, right? And the jump that you need from 60% to 90% enriched uranium is much smaller than the jump from 3.67% to 20 or to 60%. So the point is they've already done the hard work. They have that knowledge. They can build it if they want to build it. At this point, given the victories of the genocide axis in the Levant, it seems, it would appear as, it would appear that they really don't have any choice but to go for the bomb. If you look at North Korea, the Americans butchered 20% of North Korea's population. They built nuclear bombs as a deterrent. It worked. Now, it's not like, Iran would be destabilizing anything because the Israelis already have nuclear weapons, and look what they do with conventional ones. So if anyone should be disarmed of their nuclear bombs, it's the United States, who are the only country to have ever used them, and they used them against civilians twice. And it's Israel who are committing genocide and who are, the whole country is founded on land grabs and mass murder. So look what they're doing just with normal conventional armaments, never mind nuclear bombs. And they have the Samson option too. They're ready to destroy the whole planet in case it comes to an end case scenario. So it looks like the Iranians at this point in time, with the Americans and the Israelis and the West refusing to back down, they really have no choice but to build a nuclear bomb. And again, I've covered the nuclear deal very closely on the ground. I've seen every single bloody turn. The Iranians try to de-escalate, they try diplomacy, and the response is go to hell. Every time the West are telling them, we don't care. We're going to condemn you. We're going to sanction you. We're going to act like you are the problem. And we are angels, and the Americans haven't done anything wrong. The silver lining of Iran, because many in Iran are angry that they ever even entered the nuclear deal, but I'm actually happy they did. You know why? Because at least they tried, and the silver lining is that they can always say, we entered the deal, we followed it to a T. Even when the Americans left, we were still abiding by it to the letter for a whole goddamn year. We're still in the bloody nuclear deal, even after they put sanctions on us, everything. And that proves that the West doesn't respect appeasement or diplomacy, which is sad, which is, of course, a very bad thing. But it's just as a case study, it provides a very interesting example of how, unfortunately, we do not have a diplomatic core. We have a core of bastards who just like escalation. And if anyone is responsible, for Iran building a nuclear bomb as if, it's the end of the world, like Israel having a nuclear bomb isn't cause for concern. But if anyone is responsible for Iran building a nuclear bomb, it's first and foremost Israel and the West, and nobody else. Nobody else. If they are pushed to building one, you can thank Israel and you can thank the West. It's really, they have done everything in their power to make sure that they leave Iran no choice but to build the nuclear bomb. Again, YouTube demonetized my channel because I'm not allowed to say naughty things about Israel. You know, telling the truth is who is explaining the role that Syria played and why now it's easier to attack Iran. So he writes that Israel has now destroyed Syria's air defenses, dropping 1,800 bombs on over 500 targets in a few hours. Okay, that number has actually surpassed 500 now. So Israel has bombed Syria over 500 times in the last 3-4 days. Keep in mind, when Bashar al-Assad was in power, they did a few hundred airstrikes in 10 years. Now they did them in 4 days. So this means, Naftali goes on to say that Israel can use Syria's airspace more freely, meaning violate it, turning Syria into a springboard for attacking Iran, which is exactly what they would do with Lebanon's airspace, actually. When they would bomb Syria, they would go through Lebanon to reach the targets without any interference, you know, to get as close as possible in a safe manner, and then they would cut into Syria and go that way. So he continues here and says that Syria used to possess the most densely concentrated array of air defense batteries in the world. Dozens of Russian-made SA-17s, 22s, 6s, 8s, and 5s, 5 batteries launched hundreds of missiles at Israeli fighter jets over the past decade, downing an Israeli F-16 in 2018. Generations of Israeli fighter pilots were raised memorizing the range of Syrian SA-5 missiles and studying the vulnerabilities of the MiG-29. So MiGs are of course, Russian Soviet planes. And their weakness was that they had weak radar and a small fuel tank. But no longer. The nemesis of the Israeli Air Force has been completely destroyed. So do you see, again, the vocabulary being used? This is from an Israeli. An Israeli is saying that Syria had the most densely packed array of anti-aircraft in the Middle East. And who's the Israeli Air Force's nemesis? The Syrian MiG-29. Now, obviously, you know, Syria's military was not in a state, especially after this war, after it was already hollowed out, of beating Israel one-on-one. You know, Israel has always had that support from NATO, from the West, in terms of logistical supply, intelligence, and so on. But nevertheless, when the Israelis are admitting how much of a, I don't want to say the word threat because they're the ones bombing Syria, they're the threat, but of how much of a challenge and how much of an obstacle Syria's defenses and military gear posed, it says a lot, right? It had deterrence. It did have deterrence. Even though I was always complaining that, look how much they're bombing Syria, I would always point this out and criticize them for not doing enough. But even then, you know, you compare that to now, and you can see actually they were doing as best as they could, I suppose. Once again, Israel is being armed by Germany, by the UK, by the US. It has unlimited amounts of ammunition and resources. So we have to take that into consideration. He goes on to say that even Russia's advanced S-300 batteries used by Iran were destroyed by the Israeli Air Force earlier this year. While Iran still likely possesses dozens of advanced air defense systems, the balance of power in the Middle East has shifted. It has shifted. Now, S-300s are not the latest generation of surface-to-air missiles produced by the Russians. They actually have S-400s, but you know, I don't recall them having any. Well, I don't recall them having many of them, if any at all, in Syria, and certainly they didn't give them to Syria. I think they tried transferring some S-300s, but you know, the models that he was talking about before, you know, one of them reached Dimona, for example. We're talking about an SA-200, which is from the Cold War. So Syria had a lot of Cold War era Soviet gear that was still functional and still useful. Dimona is the nuclear reactor that the Israelis build their nuclear weapons at. It's their prime nuclear facility. And they were bombing Syria about 2 years ago, and Syria fired a surface-to-air missile. errant to the point that it actually followed that jet for a few hundred kilometers before landing roughly 30, 40 kilometers away from Dimona. So it could have caused a massive nuclear issue, and it would have been, I mean, entirely the Israelis' fault. No one invited them to bomb Syria, right? But Syria is just defending its airspace. But it just goes to show you that these things are still effective, even though they weren't the latest gear. The way that they were, the amount of batteries and the way that they were positioned was still effective to a large extent. So here we've got a military correspondent for the Times of Israel. Look what he says. It says, after over a decade of evading air defenses over the skies of Syria during a campaign against Iran's supply of weapons to Hezbollah, the Israeli Air Force says it has achieved total air superiority in the area. An Israeli bombing campaign earlier this week across Syria aimed at taking out advanced weaponry that can fall into the hands of hostile elements following the collapse of the Bashar al-Assad regime also destroyed the vast majority of the air defenses in the country. So you see that they're contradicting themselves, because one minute they say that they're destroying weapons that are going to be transferred, and then they say they're destroying weapons that could fall into the wrong hands. But how can, we're talking about surface-to-air missiles, about air defense. Why? I mean, how could they fall into the wrong hands exactly? They're not offensive weapons; they're defensive weapons, aren't they? They're even saying it in the name. They're air defense weapons. So they would only be a problem if you're attacking Syria. So they're kind of admitting in their own sentence that they're a problem because Israel always likes to bomb Syria, right? So that was a funny thing I wanted to point out here. But just look at what he's saying. He's saying that according to the military, the Israeli Air Force destroyed 86% of air defenses across Syria. So that's a total of 107 separate air defense components and 47 radars. It's a radar. I mean, how can a radar fall into the wrong hands? It's just, it's a radar. That's it. And, it goes to show you again that they want to keep Syria defenseless. It's got nothing to do with Bashar al-Assad. Whoever takes over Syria, or let me rephrase that, the Syrian people, right? They love to use that phrase, the Ukrainian people, the Syrian people, every time they want to make some, pontificating statement. But seriously, I'm not doing it sarcastically. Syria, the Syrian people need defenses, do they not? Right? Look at what Israel does in the name of its security, right? It justifies everything. So, well, guess what? Syria also wants security, and it needs it as a matter of fact, because it keeps getting attacked by Israel. They've taken that security away, and these jihadists, these Al-Qaeda henchmen, head choppers that had just taken over Damascus, allowed them to do it. So at best, they're incompetent, and at worst, and you should assume the worst, they conspired with Israel to do that. But thank God they finally issued a rebuke at the United Nations via the Syrian ambassador to the permanent mission there. So all of the diplomats in the Syrian diplomatic corps have been told to remain at their posts. They have not been replaced or reappointed yet, or called back, called back home. But regardless, this so-called new government, the transitional government, told the Syrian ambassador to the UN in New York to rebuke the Israelis after several days of Israel stealing land, destroying every defense and weapon imaginable that Syria possesses, ships, tanks, ammunition dumps, whatever. And like the only thing they did is just, say something please at the UN after 5 days. So they have successfully transformed Syria into a hollowed out Western Israeli puppet regime that can't stand up for itself. Well done. Well done. And here you can see the result. I mean, just look at these tanks, all of these helicopters. I mean, all of it just on the air, still on the airfield and in the bases, turned to rubble, to ash. So it clearly didn't pose a threat to anyone. It just, they just destroyed it for the sake of destroying it because they could. And you remember how many times they bombed Damascus airport. Look, all I mean, I showed you this photograph actually, but this one's more zoomed out now. yeah, I mean, it's insane. You know, they destroyed Damascus airport, Aleppo airport several times. I don't know why this bloody picture keeps coming up. I'm trying to show you different ones. Yeah, so this one was released by the Israelis themselves, and they're just showing off their footage, you know, just like they show off their genocide. So they love releasing footage, and you can see all of this stuff is on the runway. It's on the ground. It's not flying. It's not manned. It's not being used in any capacity. They just want to make sure that Syria is a neutered, eunuch, impotent, you know, spineless, defanged, declawed, whatever, hollowed out state. That's it. They don't want any capacity left for Syria to defend itself. Outrageous, truly outrageous. I mean, over 500 airstrikes. Madness, madness, madness. And the worst part is, look what they've taken, this, you know, Mount Haramon. Look at that. Do you see what we're talking about? When you're up there, you can see all over Lebanon, okay? It's the highest peak in Syria, and it's called Jabal al-Sheikh because it looks like, you know, the head of a sheikh, the snow, basically. But it's I can't overstate how strategic and how important this place is. And they took it without a fight. That is the most pathetic part of all this. And this is what Jolani says. Oh, we're not ready to fight. See that? People are exhausted from war.
الطلب كان فيها هو تواجد ميليشيات الإيرانية وميليشيات حزب الله ووجود النظام نفسه اللي قام بالمجازر اللي شايفينها اليوم.
Changing the subject, deflecting all of this, you know, and I found an accurate graphic of what's going on. This is what Netanyahu is doing to the new government, basically. And I mean, it's not really the new government, is it? He's doing it to all of Syria. That's really what the truth is. That's what the truth. That's what's really happening. And to make matters worse, they're already ethnically cleansing the southern parts of Syria. For example, you know, these villages that are in the surrounding areas of Dar'a, they're telling people to evacuate. They're telling them to go, just like they do with Gaza, you know, or with Lebanon. Oh, this is, you know, you have to go to a safe zone now. Please leave. You're about to die in 2 minutes. Thank you. Bye-bye. Right? And then they will go so either they will get the Druze, they will make, not Jews, Druze, right? So like in Majd al-Shams, they will get the Druze in Sweden to basically secede and become their own country, which partitions Syria and accomplishes the same goal of weakening Syria, and then maybe make a Kurdish, you know, Kurdistan east of the Euphrates, so all of the oil and the crops are gone, and then you have Al-Qaeda controlling the middle part of Syria, and then they've done a Sykes-Picot 2.0 or 3.0 at this point, right? And here you can see them. You can see them coming in, okay, these are the Israelis, and performing these Talmudic rituals on Syrian soil. And they're doing this next to Haramon, next to Jabal al-Sheikh. And basically, you know, sanctifying the ground before they colonize it, before they seal it. You get the idea. And look how the Syrian, the Free Syrian Army, Al-Qaeda, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, who knows what the hell to call them anymore. Look how they talk about all of this. They're asked by the Times of Israel, are you in contact with Israeli officials? And then basically the rebels, the terrorists didn't say anything, but Israel confirmed that they are. And then here they said to the Times of Israel, so the fact they're talking to an Israeli outlet already is scandalous, right? They said, we are thankful to Israel for its strikes in Lebanon and in Syria. Okay. And we hope that after the fall of Bashar al-Assad, Israel will plant a rose in the Syrian garden and will support the Syrian people. I mean, I'm sorry, man. No amount of backside kissing and tongue bathing is going to make the Israelis come and plant roses. You're delusional. You're truly delusional. This is delusional. And going back to the on the topic of media, today Israeli media were broadcasting from inside of Damascus. Did you hear me correctly? Israeli media were broadcasting from inside the Syrian capital in broad daylight today. Look at this. This is I-24, Israeli channel in Syria, in Damascus.
The thing that is very incredible that all people are very, very happy. In any time of the year, people are happy. For me, it's a very heart beating to be in this area and see all the people who are happy. I have been waiting for a moment like this for all of my life. Most of people's problems in Syria is Bashar al-Assad, nothing else.
I'm free. This is how I feel. I'm free. I'm literally free now. Bashar al-Assad is now out of Syria and will never come. And I want him dead, like every single Syrian in this world. Because we have suffered, and this man must die. Because he went to kill us here in Syria. Every single man in Syria have suffered his rage. So we need him killed right away. Please let this message.
Actually, it's perfect for Israeli television, you know, not like, oh, we should have a trial and hold this man accountable for his crimes because this is a new day in Syria. It's a democratic country. No. It's like, let's execute him. When do we begin the hangings? It's so perfect for Israeli TV, you know, the level of deranged thinking. Yeah, well done. Well done, really. Just it's really makes you proud, you know, really reflects so well on Syrians right now. Just
have suffered his rage. So we need him killed right away. Please let this message be with all the Syrian people in here. Let the Syrian live, please.
What's next for Syria? What happens next?
Syria is going to be a great nation. We hope that. And we need it to be we need the democracy. Let the American be with us.
Yeah, you know, first we do the executions, then we have the democracy. And I love how he's yelling, I'm free, and he's holding up a flag of when Syria was a French mandate. Yes, that's a colonial flag, which makes this whole thing all the more humiliating. It's like they couldn't even pick a good flag. They went and chose the flag of the so-called First Syrian Republic. You need to understand something. After World War I, when France and Britain carved up the Middle East, they couldn't give people independence because that would be, you know, that would be way too democratic. Can't have that. So, you know, they got these mandates through the failed League of Nations to set up protectorates, you know. So basically, like, it's a budding democracy. It's like, you know, we have to police the savages out, boy. We can't have them running their own show. No, that would be far too egregious right now. The white man has to come in and teach these savages how things are done, quite frankly. So that's what France and Britain did. They set up protectorates. It's a colony. It's a colony. Okay, you can call it whatever you want. It's a colony, and that's the flag. So well done. You're so free. You have a French flag in your hand. So you have to love the irony. It's so funny. It's really it's like someone in handcuffs saying, "I just broke out of jail." Yeah, the stupidity is really something to behold. And talking to an Israeli channel. You know, it's like I think one of you said it in the comments, it's like a ritual of humiliation for the Israelis. Please understand this. Please, even if you support the whole revolution, the so-called revolution, even if you, please listen to what I'm telling you. This is a piece of friendly advice. When an Israeli channel shows up and films you like this, they are not doing it because they give a toss about you having democracy or so-called democracy. They are doing it as a humiliation ritual. It's bullying. They are bombing Syria while Israeli jets are bombing Syria while Israeli camera crews film you celebrating, with the bombs in the background. It's like, if that doesn't make you grasp it, nothing will. I can't help you. I'd rather talk to a wall. As a matter of fact, I am. No, but seriously, it's like you're just never going to get it. Then Israel is at war with Syria and has been at war with Syria for 50 years. For 50 years, whether you like it or not. Whether you like it or not. You can hate Bashar al-Assad and you can, want democracy and all these lovely things. Sorry, Israel doesn't care. Israel is at war with Syria. And as a matter of fact, when Israel goes and backs the opposition, well, it's no longer a revolution, is it? It's a hostile takeover. It's a hostile takeover. And when that opposition takes power, the occupation expands. Israel is occupying Syria. This is a fact. There's no way around that. Israel is at war with Syria. This is a fact. And when Israel is celebrating with you as you take power, you should really reflect on your life choices and start asking yourself, why is Netanyahu clapping at the same time? Why is Erdogan happy? Why is America happy? You should really start worrying. You should really, this should be a wake-up moment. Unfortunately, some people just won't get it. Well, it's too late. There's no more military. Syria is defenseless. Syria has lost one of the most important not outposts, but just simply military posts that it has. It's gone. I mean, this land, we're never getting it back. When the Golan Heights, just what they had already taken in '67, was a bloody challenge, and now they've taken even more of it, and they're still going to take more of it. They're like 16 kilometers from Damascus now. Let me explain something to you. Do you know why the Israelis haven't advanced all the way? Because they already control Damascus. They don't need to go to Damascus proper. They don't actually need to be, in the Umayyad Mosque or in the Su'al Hamidiyeh. They already run Damascus now. Are you starting to get what I'm telling you? The people, the head-chopping jihadists, Al-Qaeda, Al-Nusra, Jolani, work for Israel. They're in Damascus already. It's just the ones in IDF uniforms are 16 kilometers from Damascus. That's the only difference. Get it? And this is what we lost, yeah? This is just look at this, okay? This map. If you have Mount Haramoun, you've got Jabal al-Sheikh, this spot, look at what that offers you. The visual line of sight, okay, is in red, and then the radio, so the sphere of, the radius of the radio is in green, okay? So it almost reaches Cyprus, basically. It effectively does reach Cyprus. Do you understand what a strategic disaster it is to have lost this area? Even if Israel didn't destroy a single Syrian jet, even if, Syria was now the perfect democracy, the quintessential democracy on planet Earth, losing this spot on Mount Haramoun, disaster. Absolute disaster. You can oversee the whole bloody Levant from that place. And the Israelis know what they just captured, and they are bloody dancing. They're literally dancing at our funerals. Look at them. And they're posting, this one over here is posting about how, gonna go skiing. Mount Haramoun is ours, accept it. Just, land theft. That's what Zionists do best. And some Syrians are, punch drunk and high on the hubris. Just, what can I say? You can't have a future without sovereignty. Sovereignty is the basis for everything, okay? It's the foundation on which you build everything, your economy, your foreign policy, your domestic policy, your system of governance. All of it depends on sovereignty. You don't have sovereignty, you have nothing. You don't, even if you are under a dictatorship, you don't even own that dictatorship. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Even if you're occupied, the occupation doesn't belong to you. That's how oppressed you are without sovereignty. You have nothing. You own and will have nothing. And some people are willing to buy a fake illusion of democracy with their sovereignty. And frankly, those people are so stupid. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. Maybe we don't deserve it, which pains me to say that. Really does. There will be future generations cursing the minute that this crap happened, because they will understand. They will have the hindsight of grasping what it is that Syrians today think was liberation. Not to mention the rest of the region and the rest of the global south. Again, YouTube.
A mix of war fatigue, 13 years of sanctions, destruction of the Syrian economy, bribing of Syrian generals, a lack of motivation, to a great extent, most of the Syrian Arab army, foreign interference in droves, US, NATO stun, Israel, Turkey, and this plan, which was initially a takeover of Aleppo, when they saw that was too easy and it took less than 48 hours to get 3/4 of Aleppo, they kept going. There was no resistance, and that's it. The whole thing collapses since the beginning of the war, almost 14 years ago, in a matter of hours.
What role did the United States play, Pepe?
Well, this was what they wanted since 2011. Oh my God. And bipartisan, of course. This is an imperial policy. So this is at the heart of the imperial system, what I called in the past the Empire of Chaos. That was the book that I published in 2014. And there are many chapters in this book dealing with Syria, with Libya, of course, but also with Syria. For many reasons, of course, because Syria was trying to be sovereign. Syria is the fulcrum of the Arab world. The historical, cultural importance of Syria throughout centuries. The connection between Iran and Hezbollah going through Syria. The fact that they refuse to abide by the rules of neoliberalism and a hardcore capitalism and the international financial system, and of course the diktats of the empire, you name it. Basically, a small nation in a very volatile region trying to impose a measure of sovereignty. From the point of view of the empire, this is anathema, as we all know.
Right, right. Is it fair to say that there was no takeover of the Syrian government, rather there was a destruction of the Syrian state, and that in fact, as a geopolitical entity, Syria no longer exists?
Unfortunately, Judge, Syria culturally, even geographically, geopolitically, and geoeconomically, the Syria that we knew no longer exists. This is one of the saddest developments in international relations of the past, not only this millennium, but the past few decades, including the short 20th century, as Eric Hobsbawm used to say. Yes, please.
The American media, mainly the Washington Post and the New York Times, and to a certain extent the Wall Street Journal, have been claiming that President Putin gave up on Syria, or was asleep at the switch, is overextended, is a poor leader. Did he know exactly what he was doing when Assad refused to take his advice repeatedly and consistently?
He knew, of course they knew. The Putin and the Security Council, they knew. They saw more or less the writing on the wall, since that fateful meeting in Moscow, 28th, 29th of November, where basically Assad was practically begging for Russia to involve itself in another war. And obviously the Russians, they have more important things to take care of in Ukraine, of course. So very politely, Putin said, not again. We already did this in 2015. There was the liberation of Aleppo, which was essential. Liberation of Aleppo was 7 years ago. So now they're going to have to reconquer Aleppo. 8 years ago, I'm sorry. So it's going to take another 8 years to reconquer Aleppo again. And of course, the Russians were trying to impart to Assad that he needed to do a lot that he hadn't done in terms of talking to the legalized opposition. These are the words of Lavrov himself, you know. Little bit of a political opening, re-equipping the army, and nothing was done. So
when he fled to Moscow, I mean, are his wife and children with him? Are his assets with him? Where does he live? Do we know any of this?
When he went in late November, the family went with him. Absolutely. It's still not clear if the family stayed throughout all the way to a week ago, or if they came back to Syria and then left again. But Judge, I would like to introduce, I would say, the absolutely key development of the past few hours, which is Assad's explanation of what happened. This surfaced a few hours ago. A lot of us are thinking that it may be a fake.
Let me put it up on the screen for you. So
yeah.
Chris, let's do 2 and then number 3, and I'll read them aloud. This
Yes.
is what he allegedly said from Moscow. My
Exactly.
departure from Syria was neither planned nor did it occur in the final hours of the battles. As terrorist forces infiltrated Damascus, I moved to Latakia in coordination with our Russian allies to oversee combat operations. Next one, Chris. Upon arrival at the air base that morning, it became clear that our forces had completely withdrawn from all battle lines and that the last army positions had fallen. As the field situation in the area continued to deteriorate, the Russian military base itself came under intensified attack by drone strikes with no viable means of leaving the base. Moscow requested that the base's command arrange an immediate evacuation to Russia. Did he actually issue these statements, Pepe?
No, he recorded an explanation, which as far as our best information, and this was forbidden to be broadcast on Sunday for obvious reasons, because HTS was already inside Damascus on Sunday. There's an enormous problem in something that he says, Judge. Right after he says that my departure was neither planned, he says, I remained in Damascus carrying out my duties until the early hours of Sunday, the 8th. There's a huge problem because as far as practically all of us know, he left on Saturday, not on Sunday. And so he didn't leave from Latakia to Moscow on Sunday. He left on maximum Saturday night.
Right. So he recorded a speech which was never broadcast.
Never broadcast, yes. So we have a serious problem with this. First of all, because this explanation doesn't explain anything. Apparently, he's going to release a further document later on with details. This does not explain anything, and this discrepancy about when did he actually leave Syria to Moscow, it's glaring. It's extremely serious. And of course, it doesn't say anything about the army. He already knew when he was talking to Putin and the Security Council in Moscow in late November that the army was dissolving. And he had information from the Iranians, among others, that some of the generals will turn against him or were being bribed. So he knew that he had no army anymore, essentially, apart from the 25th Division, which, by the way, that's very interesting. The 25th Division now, they are organizing a guerrilla resistance in Latak, in the mountains. And they're about at least 1,000 soldiers or so. These are the elite of the elite of Syrian.
Okay, but Pepe, a resistance to what? Is
Exactly.
there any central government remaining in Syria?
No, it will be a resistance against the HTS, which now they have a transitional prime minister, let's put it this way, Mohammed al-Bashir, who used to be the former governor of Idlib province, and he was appointed by Jolani himself. So we assume that the Tiger forces, 1,000 top soldiers or so, the resistance against this new interim government. They didn't explain in detail. There was a short video where they're saying that they're going to be a resistance. So we can assume that the elite forces of the Syrian Arab army, they're still there, including some of the generals, apart from General Sohail Hassan, which is, let's say, the General Patton of Syria. He was offered asylum by Russia. But all the other major commanders of the Tiger forces, they are at the mountains. We wonder if they have weapons to stage their resistance. Big, yeah.
Do they have provisions to
provisions
in the mountains?
And if there is going to be some sort of movement in Latakia province, Alawite, of course, always supported Assad and the family, still do. If they're going to organize the background, the backup for this resistance. So it's not over completely. And of course, in terms of fighting power, these people are really, really hardcore. So HTS fighters, badly trained or trained in a rudimentary way, they should be. It's going to be tough. But the thing is that will this resistance have enough leeway? And obviously, they cannot leave those mountains because then they will be exposed. They have no air power, and they have no air power on top.
What role does oil play in all this?
Enormous. I put on my X one of my first columns about Syria as a Pipelinistan war. Pipelinistan exactly was this term that I coined over 20 years ago, basically centering on Eurasia, Central Asia, Azerbaijan, the Caucasus, the BTC.
But what is Pipelinistan?
Pipelinistan is the universe rolling around the building of pipelines. And it's a word in itself, in fact. For instance, this illustration that you're showing, this would be essentially the Iran-Pakistan-India pipeline, which was never built. The green one would be what we used to call TAPI, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India pipeline. There was for many years, there was a direct competition between both of these projects, and none of them in the end happened. There's a strong possibility for TAPI, much more than IPI, which became IP because the Americans told the Indians, no, you cannot have a pipeline coming from Iran and Pakistan. The BTC pipeline, for instance, which Brzezinski invented in 1995, he went to Baku to sell this to Aliyev. This is, I would say, the philosophical stone of Pipelinistan, because it was the first transnational pipeline that the Americans thought would be essential to start cutting off Russia and Iran at the same time. And of course, Syria The big story in terms of oil and gas in Syria is a gas pipeline that would be from Qatar to across Saudi Arabia, Syria, and Turkey to sell gas to Europe. And there was a competing idea, which would be an Iran, Iraq, Syria pipeline, and then from Syria in the Eastern Mediterranean all the way to Europe. So these projects were competing since the early 2010s. And then Assad said no to the idea of a pipeline going to Turkey via Syria. And that was one of the I tend to call it the number one motive for the war. It's this one, and of course, the US could not tolerate relatively sovereign Syria. These were the two most important reasons for the war itself. Now, it's not by accident. The last week, we had the Turkish Minister of Energy, Bayraktar, saying openly, now everything is perfect. We can start even thinking about building that pipeline. He was referring to Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Syria, Turkey pipeline gas to Europe. It's going to be very, very difficult. Of course, Saudi Arabia will not like the idea of having a pipeline that they do not control. It's controlled by Qatar. And in terms of energy superstardom, Qatar will reap the rewards, not Saudi Arabia.
What is the prospect for relationships between Russia and Turkey over the demise of Syria?
Wow. This is something, Judge. I'll be in Istanbul next month. This will be my number one question for everybody. Absolutely. There is, when you look at what's being discussed among Russian think tanks and very good analysts in Moscow, there is a feeling that once again we were stabbed in the back by Turkey. It's not a consensus, but it's a very, very strong view. And there will be revenge, long-term, Russian style. Not now, of course, because Turkey needs Russia for investments in energy industry, tourism, the fact that Turkey is the bridge between the West and Russia. So they need everything from Russia going to the West and vice versa as a transit point. And of course, the fact that they were sitting at the same table. And in fact, if there was a stern betrayal, it was in the face of Lavrov himself by Hakan Fidan. And Arakshi, the Iranian minister, was on the table as well. So they buried the Astana process in that table in Doha the day before the fall of Damascus. The meeting in Doha was on Saturday, Damascus fell on Sunday. So, and Hakan Fidan has been spinning that, we knew that this was going to happen. And then we had to show the Russians and the Iranians there was no way out. No, this is not what happened. What happened is that Tehran and Moscow saw in advance that this was going nowhere, and it will be better for them to retract, regroup, and do something later, which is exactly what they're going to do. The story is only beginning. And there is, I would say, a lot of speculation about the fact that Iran and Russia, they built a trap for Turkey and the Americans. No, it's much more complicated than that. It's a mix of both. It's the Americans, Turkey, and Israel and NATO were trying to lay a trap for Russia and Iran, but they saw it in advance, and they prefer to retract because it will be absolutely pointless to try to restart another war in Syria with enormous bloodshed, problems for them, Iran and Russia, and for the Syrian people, and for the Syrian army, which they knew was not ready for another war. And they knew that the greater Idlibistan Renta Jihadi mob, they had excellent intel. They had electronic surveillance. They were jamming GPS, you name it. They had full backing from NATO, essentially, and from Israel. So it will be a bloodbath, and they prefer not now.
Should Prime Minister Netanyahu be rejoicing, or should he be admonished to be careful what you ask for?
he never does be careful what he asks for, Judge. He is like, dancing like this is Christmas before Christmas, literally. Well, they better be careful, because there's going to be, I would say, a conjunction of blowbacks, which can be simultaneous or not, because HTS is not a friend of Israel. HTS was serving Israeli interests, but HTS serves Turkish interests, essentially, which are not exactly the same as Israeli interests. So for the moment, we are watching more or less the partition of Iraq between Turks, Israelis, and Americans. But this is the first stage. Can you imagine when these fluid borders will start to dissolve, and then everybody will be fighting everybody else, including especially local tribes and clans from north and northeast Syria to western Syria. This is going to be a tribal, clannish war, and also involving foreign powers. It's going to be something that we are not even prepared to how this thing could go down, like, in a cataclysmic way.
I want to play a tape for you of President Putin earlier today speaking to the Russian defense establishment.
Exactly.
Commenting on the Western urge for dominance. Chris, cut number 12.
Today, the military and political situation in the world remains difficult and unstable. Bloodshed in the Middle East and high conflict potential remains in a number of other regions of the world. We see that the current U.S. administration, almost the entire collective West, does not give up trying to maintain its global dominance and continues to impose its so-called rules on the world community, which at the same time changes over and over again, distorts facts because it is convenient for them. But in fact, there is only one stable rule, no rules for those who do this, for those who consider themselves at the head of the whole world, those who representatives of the Lord on earth. Although they themselves do not believe in the Lord and wage hybrid wars against undesirable states and implement a policy of containment, including in relation to Russia, the desire to weaken our country to cause a defeat for us. The United States is send advisors and thereby signaling a further escalation of the conflict.
You'd see the head of the Russian state chastising the West for not believing in God.
In front of his Minister of Defense and
right.
and the chief of St. Gerasimov, the chief of staff. It's a fantastic scene. Well, Thursday, it's Putin's annual press conference. So apparently he's going to answer questions from everybody. I sent a question, Judge. My question was very simple. It was what we're discussing now. Was Syria a strategic defeat for Russia? I hope Peskov picks up my question and asks Putin. I'm not so sure, because this is, at the moment, is a bit embarrassing. The discussion in Russia, including Russian media, they are trying to be as circumspect about it as humanly possible.
Thank you, Pepe. Great conversation, my dear friend. Much more to come, apparently, on all of this. If your question is asked on Thursday,
Coffee, follow me.